thrilled everyone's here and looking, we're going to be together today for a little while. We'll take breaks as needed. So, just would note that we call today an orientation, that there are a couple of ways to think of an orientation. Pardon that noise in the background. Those are my the radiators in this old house. Can y'all hear those? Yeah, I certainly can. A couple of ways to think about an orientation. One is, this is the way we do it, and this is the way you'll do it. You're going to orient yourself to the way to do it. The other way to think about orientation, which is what this is about, is to get our common compass bearings right, set, to say, where are things? What does the map look like? It's to survey the map of the Episcopal Church in Delaware and just to see what's out there, who's doing what. So it's not nearly about telling you, it doesn't matter that the Holy Spirit called you to ministry, so just kind of keep your mouth shut and follow the recipe. That's not what we're about. It's rather to say, this is the landscape now. The Holy Spirit has called you into ministry. What guidance, how can you help add things to the map or whatever? So welcome to orientation, and I'm looking forward to today.
And the other thing I was going to say is that we are gathered, if we were gathered in a place and not virtually, if you needed another cup of coffee or to anything else, that you would simply get up and do that. And that's the same here today. It is a long period of time, and one never knows what radiators or puppies or whatever will call for our attention. So just like in any other meeting, if you have a need to move or whatever, please do that. I'd like our presenters, who will get kind of a foretaste of what we'll be talking about. And we have several presenters who are going to help us and aid us in that process. So I am going to ask for the presenters to simply put a name with a face, to talk about, just name the governing body that you are part of, and also tell us the parish that you are that you reside in. And I'm trying to get my little thing up here because of course the phone died while I was sitting there. So let's see. We'll start with Terry. I saw you on here. While I find this, would you like to start?
Sure. Thanks, Sarah. And good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Terry Flanagan. I am at St. Barnabas Episcopal Church, and I am president of the standing committee for the coming year. I'd like to also extend my welcome to everyone to your new positions, and look forward to working with you all.
Thank you. Just give me a moment and I will get, let's see. Kay, you're right in front of me. Here we go. It's coming up.
Good morning, and I'll echo Terry's welcome. I am the vice president of the council, and I'm serving going into my second term of being vice president, my third year on council. And I am a member of Christ Church Christiana 100.
Thank you. Tempe?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm at St. Martha's Bethany Beach, and I am the off-going member of the trustees, turning my position over to Patty Downing. Congratulations again. And I'm also Vice Chancellor of the Diocese. So I'm in two roles today because Ann Foster is unable to be with us.
Judy? Judy here?
Good morning.
Yes.
I like seeing all of you like this. Happy New Year. So I am the canon for finance and administration for the diocese. And my job is to assist all of you in doing mission and ministry. And to do that, I work with a number of committees, governance boards, and then every single person in the pew. Thank you.
Thank you. Frank?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Frank Daniels. I am from St. Paul's in Camden, and I am the new treasurer of the council. Talked to the bishop last September when we took over, and you just heard from Judy, who's the canon, who happens to be the brains behind the outfit. Don't let anybody kid you. So welcome, everyone.
Thank you. Tempe, you're back up? No, but we'll go to John. John Pumphrey?
Good morning, everyone. I'm John
Morning.
Pumphrey, and I'm the chair of the Commission on Ministry and associated with Emmanuel on the Green and Nativity.
Margie?
You're muted, Margie.
Muted.
That's the first time somebody's had to be reminded. Won't be the last, probably. Margie Pumphrey. I'm the resource priest at Church of the Nativity and president of the disciplinary board.
Thank you. Martha?
Good morning, all. I'm Martha Kirkpatrick. I'm the canon of the ordinary, and it's great to see you. And I'm going to be talking about the Mission Support Office and how all that connects to what you all are doing.
And Bishop?
Kevin Brown, Bishop of the Episcopal Church in Delaware, and I worship at all of your churches joyfully. And it's one of the great gifts of my job. And I serve as the president of Diocesan Council and the president of the trustees. And I'm work very closely with the standing committee, and then all sorts of other relationships with all of these bodies, for which I am grateful. It's good to be here.
All right. Thank you very much. As we center into our day's work, we are ever mindful that it is not our work that we are about, but about God's work and the work of mission and the work of extending God's grace in this world. And so many of the council, many of the leadership bodies use the prayer dedicated to Archbishop Oscar Romero. And it is a beautiful prayer. While it is not scripture, it reminds me of scripture, and it is a beautiful prayer. And so our thinking was that today, that instead of beginning with a Bible study, we would do a similar sort of process with this prayer of Oscar Romero. So I invite you, it's in your agenda, and it's a little different in the agenda than what I have in my calendar. So we'll use the one in the agenda so that we all have the same thing in front of us. And what I'll invite people to do is to simply read one petition. They're marked with punctuation. And maybe if we each read it, and there's no hurry to get through it, but read a line. And then as the Spirit moves you, have the next person read a line, because we cannot, we can't go in order because you guys keep flipping all over my screen. So we'll just go as the Spirit moves us. So I will begin. Is that clear? Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I think, unless that was done already, I think the rest of the participants were supposed to do some introductions, or are we?
We're going to do that after the prayer. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you. So I'll begin, and then we'll just center in that and read a line, and then we'll go back to looking at it. In the name of Jesus Christ, let us pray. And you'll need to unmute to read your line.
O God, in our desire to serve you faithfully, remind us anew how it helps now and then to step back and take a long view.
Your kingdom is not only beyond our efforts, it is beyond our vision.
We accomplish in our lifetime only a tiny fraction of the magnificent enterprise that is your work.
Nothing we do is complete, which is a way of saying that your kingdom always lies beyond us.
No statement says all that could be said.
No prayer fully expresses our faith.
No confession brings perfection.
No pastoral visit brings wholeness.
No program accomplishes your entire mission.
No set of goals and objectives includes everything.
Guide us, O Lord, and grant us wisdom and strength to see your hand at work.
Remind us again that we plant seeds that one day will grow and which others will harvest.
We water seeds already planted, knowing that they hold future promise.
We lay foundations that will need further development.
We provide yeast that produces far beyond our capabilities.
We cannot do everything, and there is a sense of liberation in realizing that.
This enables us to do something and to do it very well.
Our work may be incomplete, but it is a beginning, a step along the way, an opportunity for your grace to enter and do the rest.
We may never see the end results, but that is the difference between the master builder and the worker.
We are workers, not master builders, ministers, not messiahs.
We are prophets of your future, O Lord, not our own.
In your most holy name,
we pray.
Amen.
Amen.
That prayer obviously is a prayer that pushes us and supports us in a lot of other huge ways. As you listen to that, or as you read it, either for the first time or for the 100th time, are there parts of that or a phrase of that or something that captures you on this morning? And you have to unmute to share.
The whole idea that we are really a very, very small part of a much bigger whole.
Other thoughts or phrases that speak to you this morning?
I really value the fact that things will not be complete and that it is okay to have things still happening and percolating along the way.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, it was the line, we are workers, not master builders, ministers, not messiahs. I want to be the master builder and messiah, I think. And many times I think I am as I go about my day, and it would help if I remember I'm a worker.
I love the continuity that we're part of a whole. What's come before, we get to water seeds that were planted, and then that someone else, others will continue the work. And that's very hopeful. That's just very hopeful for me.
I like DJ. I'm struck by the master builder worker dichotomy, and I think as she also, I can also confess to often wanting to be the master builder rather than the worker, but I have to continually remind myself that we are workers, we are not master builders, we are ministers, and we are not messiahs, despite how we may want to be.
I particularly struck by the part that says we may never see end results. That really takes a long-term view of things, and probably reminds us we have term limits as well.
The prayer, as I read it, and as it's presented here, has kind of three sections in it. The first section is that begins with that desire to serve faithfully. The second is giving us the wisdom and the strength to see your hand at work. And the third is the opportunity for your grace to enter in. So if we look at those kind of sections, and if you have it in front of you, it divides into sections. How do we step back to take the long view and not try to fill in gaps and that stuff? How is it that we step back to take the long view?
I think one of the ways for me that's accomplished is in continuing to practice the daily office and to read from the ancient wisdom of the church in a resource that gives a little snippet from pastors and wisdom seekers and folks in the early church through the Middle Ages through. And it just reminds me that people have been on this quest and desiring this service for a very long time. And my part is just one little drop in it.
Other ways that we are able to step back and take the long view?
I think of the gospel for this Sunday, baptism, and how each time I say the creed, each time I renew, each time I come up out of that water, even though it's not literal, but every time I come up out of the water, how when I wipe my eyes, what am I seeing? What has changed? What's changed in me? What's changed in the world? And how can I change to be a part of it?
These petitions that are in that first section are about that long view. What of those early the petitions at the beginning, what of those reaches out to you on this day in terms of how we can step back?
It seems like to me that it's keeping the big picture in mind and staying grounded in that big picture. And I love that. It's because then we know what we're about within that big picture, and God is so immense that it feels very comforting to know that this is no small thing. And it's exciting because it's wonderful to have the privilege to be part of something so big.
So I'm going to bring it much narrower. And the last two lines of that, no program accomplishes your entire mission. No set of goals and objectives include everything. And I really think that's what this morning and getting the orientation is about, because we are each part of a cog in this. And it's back to Sarah's original analogy of her children playing with the gears. You know, together, all of this makes up the work of the diocese, and we're going to do it together. So council is not a separate island, but part of a bigger team. And I think that's really helpful for me to be centered in that.
I think too, where it says we accomplish only a tiny fraction of the enterprise that is God's work, reminds us that there's been a great deal that's been done before we got to where we are, and there will be a great deal more accomplished after we're done with whatever it is we're doing right now. So that our piece is important, but it's, again, as I said before, a very small part of a very large piece.
How do we gain a sense of completion, a sense of peace, a sense of settledness when we are living in the middle? If everything has a beginning, a middle, and an end, we're living in the middle. How do we gain that sense of peace and being able to rest in that?
I think one of the things that spoke to me on this prayer was, and maybe it's just because I'm a control freak, but it says we cannot do everything. And there's a sense of liberation in realizing that. And I think that in that realization that we can't do everything is where I would find peace, is knowing that, as Ruth said, just one small drop in the process of life.
The second part of this prayer has to do, guide us, O Lord, and grant us wisdom and strength to see your hand at work. Obviously, this was written for Epiphany, as we look at ordinary things around us and are able to have a vision of the divine in the ordinary. So how, in the midst of the seeds that we're planting and the work that we're doing, how and where do we see the divine? And how do we sense that the divine at work, and what is that wisdom that helps us with that?
I'm grateful for all sections of the prayer, but for the middle, because if we're not careful, the prayer can make us feel insignificant. We could see the big picture, but then it can make us feel like I'm just a drop in a tiny ocean, and maybe my work doesn't matter. And that's of course not what Scripture is about, not what the prayer is about. And I'm grateful for, after being reminded I'm a part of something bigger, that I'm still doing something meaningful, and that I am planting seeds. Real seeds that may grow into a great bush one day, and that we are laying foundations, and that's real effort. And so I see God at work in that, and I think it feels like it helps balance this. It's a sense of smallness, but not insignificance.
You asked the question, Sarah, related to our work on various councils and bodies and within the church. But yesterday I had a conversation with a man who is 40, who was a teenager in my congregation before, who is feeling called to seminary. He left the Episcopal Church and is in the Reformed Presbyterian Church. So not my story, not a shared path, but a shared path. And he was calling because he was reaching out to people who had influenced him and saying thank you. And so that in terms of that, we water seeds already planted, or plant seeds that one day will grow and harvest. I think about the people we baptize. I just was stunned to see someone that I baptized is now 22 and getting married. And so I was like, oh my God, but there's this blessing that comes from doing what we do faithfully and regularly and letting God give the growth. And so that's in the organization and administration of our parishes and committees, and making sure that that we've also given an understanding in our own hearts that this is God's growth, not ours, and God's goals, not ours. And remembering all of that, with that liberation, we can do things very, very well on behalf of the whole. So.
And those seeds, those seeds that have been implanted in us, and those seeds that we implant in others, part of that cycle. The last part, just because of time, our work may be incomplete, but it is a beginning, a step along the way, an opportunity for your grace to enter and do the rest. When we hear those words, where do we see the steps that have led us to this place? And where do we see the steps that are leading that vision that's calling us forward? Ruth just articulated, seeds that have been planted, and we see the steps behind us. We don't necessarily see the steps in front of us for this individual, but we see the steps that have led here. Other ideas about steps that we have seen and that we can articulate in the past?
I think we have to look at the steps that have been planted in us, as well as the steps that we have planted.
Yes. Where do we extend God's grace, that invitation that has been extended and implanted in us? Where and how do we extend God's grace to those around us, to the world, to the community?
I think we're often not even aware of when we have planted seeds, or what, or how and why we have touched other people. That has been brought home to me more often than not in my journey.
All right. There is obviously so much more in this prayer. Mine I taped in the front of my calendar, so that even when I'm not, if I'm in a meeting, I actually have it in front of me. But a time when I'm looking at work and looking at things, I can reference back and kind of different parts speak on different days. So I invite you in whatever way to use this prayer, using it in the leadership council, but also in your own life. You know, those times when you do feel like being a master builder, or when things go wrong and you feel like being, you know, not the master builder. So thank you. What I'd like to do now that we sort of have a, you know, maybe a little, maybe we're more awake and have a little clearer vantage. I'd like to go through, and I'm going to do it the same way because of the Zoom format. Those people who are here today, not just as presenters, but if we just kind of go through and people name church that you're with and what board you'll be serving on. Helen, you're at the top of my screen, you lucky person. So would you like to begin?
Sure. I'm Helen Spence. I'm a parishioner at St. Thomas's in Newark, and I will be a member of the Diocesan Council.
Rob?
I'm Rob Morgan. I'm a lay parishioner of St. Peter's and Louis, and I too will be a member of the council.
Tempe? I'm just going through because it seems easier. You're muted. Muted.
That's because I'm off going.
Oh, okay. Bishop?
So Kevin Brown, Bishop of the Diocese.
Howie?
Howell Sasser. I'm the rector of St. Thomas's in Newark, and I'm an incoming member of the Diocesan Council.
Frank?
There we go. I am Frank. Ooh, wrong Frank.
Bruce?
Hi, Bruce Verana. I am a member of St. James Mill Creek, and I have been on trustees, and I'm currently on trustees.
Margie? Margie, we have to unmute.
Got it.
You just want to see if we were going to catch that. Yes.
I'm Margie Pumphrey. I'm president of the disciplinary board.
Rick?
Hi, I'm Rick Hara. I'm a member of St. David's and I'm one of the trustees.
Ketlin?
Hi, I'm Ketlin Solak. I am part of the Brandywine Collaborative Ministries, which includes the 3 churches, which are Calvary Church in Hillcrest, in the Hillcrest area, Church of the Ascension, which is in Claymont, and Grace Church, which is in Tallyville.
Cecily? You have to unmute, Cecily. You have to unmute. Oh, we lost Cecily. Okay, DJ.
I'm Donna Jean Kissling. I'm with St. Peter's in Smyrna, and I'm actually in my last year on the standing committee, but I always need to learn more, so I decided to join anyway.
Ruth?
Ruth Beresford. I'm the intake officer, one of the 3 intake officers, and on the disciplinary board.
Lydia looks like she's on the phone, so I'm going to move over her. Terry?
Hi, Terry Flanagan at St. Barnabas and president of the standing committee this year.
Pat?
Good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year. I'm Deacon Patricia Malcolm, Archdeacon of the Diocese, and I'm currently serving at Christ Church in Dover.
Beth? Beth? Are you speaking? You're muted, Beth.
This didn't turn the mute off?
Now we can hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
No. Okay. I'm from St. Martha's, Bethany, and this will be my first year on standing committee.
Bob?
Good morning, Bob Irwin from Emmanuel on the Green. I am one of the intake officers working with the disciplinary board.
Patty?
I'm Patty Downing. I serve at Holy Trinity Old Sweets, and I'm a trustee now.
Chris?
Good morning. I am Chris Miller Marson, and I serve as a deacon at St. Peter's Church in Lewis, Delaware, and I am almost completed my first year of diocesan council.
Mark?
Mark Harris. I'm on the disciplinary board. I'm at St. Peter's in Lewis and the resource priest for St. Paul's in Georgetown.
Kathleen?
Good morning. I'm Kathleen, and I'm part of the Mission Support Office team.
Ann Alexis?
Morning, I'm Ann Alexis Hara. I am at St. David's, and I am a member of Diocesan Council.
Canon Judy?
Good morning. I forgot to say that I'm a member of St. Barnabas and also a member of the mission support staff.
Kay?
Kay Keenan, and I'm a parishioner at Christ Church Christiana 100 and vice president of council.
Eric?
Good morning. I'm Eric Valentine with St. John the Baptist, Milton. Let's see, outgoing standing committee member and returning back to council again. Thanks.
John?
I'm John Pumphrey, and I am the chair of the Commission on Ministry and associated with Emmanuel on the Green and Nativity.
John Michael?
John Michael Sophus, and I am at St. Peter's Lewis, and I am entering my third term as third year of council.
There must be some magnetic pull to have all the Johns close to each other. John Barrett?
Yeah, John Barrett. I'm a parishioner at Emmanuel on the Green in Newcastle, and I serve on the Standing Committee and Commission on Ministry.
Greg?
Greg Taylor, a member of St. Barnabas, and I serve on the Commission on Ministry as well.
Cal?
Morning, I'm Cal Wick, and I'm at Christ Church Christiana 100, and I'm on the trustees.
Rita?
Good morning, all. I am on the Commission on Ministry, and I worship at St. Peter's in Lewis.
Cecily, are you? Cecily? Are you driving? No.
She was going in and out of a doctor's appointment.
Okay, well, we'll come back to Cecily at another time. And Lydia, we skipped over you.
I apologize. I'm Lydia York. I'm a member of the trustees, but chairman of the investment committee.
Okay.
I am a member at St. Barnabas.
Did we get everybody? Because some of you seem to be uncomfortable in your spot and move on my Zoom lens. So I think do we have everybody? Okay.
Hi, my name is Michelle.
Okay.
I am from SAM, and I'll be serving on council.
Thank you so much. All right. So we have a wonderful group of people with a variety of experiences, people with a variety of questions, people with a variety of knowledge. And so, as the bishop said before, we're not here as much to learn things because all of us can read a manual and that will be forthcoming. But we can all read and we can all take in that didactic information, but we're really here to kind of have a conversation about what we do and how it fits together. And so what we're going to do is the presenters will now kind of go through a short description about what they do and how they're doing it. And then there'll be an opportunity at the conclusion of that to talk a bit about, questions, how they might work together. And we have a little sort of case study about how in the past these groups have built upon one another, built upon seeds which one plants, and sometimes weeded something that somebody has planted, but in order to come up with a common goal and a common vision. So we have our presenters and we have a list of how they will proceed. So Terry, you get the honor of beginning.
Thank you, Sarah. So for the standing committee, actually has probably two main functions. And I'm telling most all of you things that you already know. The first is that the standing committee is the ecclesiastical authority in the absence of a bishop. So while a diocese would be searching for a bishop, the questions that would normally go to the bishop would come to the standing committee. The second is, and unfortunately, we're in that position where we have a bishop in place. We serve as the bishop's council of advice. We also are asked to vote on and approve bishops elected in the Episcopal Church. But the advice piece for the bishop is probably where we spend the majority of our time. We review asks by different parishes for consents of sale or purchase or encumbrance of property, of real property that exists within a parish. We also give advice on judicial sentences that would come before the bishop. So it's mainly in that advisory role that we exist while the bishop is in place. So happy to take any questions, but I think Martha's summary is really excellent.
If there are questions or things you want to ask of Terry, this would be the opportunity to do that.
I would have a question for Terry. Are we unique in this diocese by having a standing committee, or might there be one?
No, we are like the canons of the Episcopal Church of the United States. A standing committee is by canon in place in every diocese. Hopefully I got that right, Bishop.
Oh yeah, you nailed it.
All right. Well, let's move on to the Diocesan Council. Okay.
Well, I'm so glad that there are so many from Diocesan Council with us today, because they can keep me straight on this. But think of this as the hardest learning curve I've experienced in a long time. It is a cyclical role. And so the first year on council, you're sort of in a blur, because somebody's bringing a budget for you to approve, but it's a budget for 2 years from now. They're coming and saying, well, this mission program needs funding, or we're not doing it, and what do you think? And it's like, what do I think? I don't even know what it is. So, you know, I've experienced a number of jobs, and when I was in analytical jobs, somebody would give you a project, you would do it, you would turn it back. When you became the manager of something, you learned that there's a cyclical time. And so council is really there to manage the finances of the diocese, to know that we have a strong budget, that we're going to be able to make what we're doing. We have spent the last couple of years also trying to answer some questions. You know, why do we have the acceptance at the level we do? What property should council own, if they should own any property? How should Camp Arrowhead's governance be managed in the diocese? So we're tackling some meeting problems relating to program, but also always related to finance. So the descriptions in the book are great. And thank you for all those that are new to council for being with us. And for those that are returning to council, I appreciate your support. And Bishop, you're not allowed to ask me how many other dioceses have councils, because I have no idea.
Well, that's right. This varies by diocese to diocese, what they call it and what their roles are. It does vary greatly by diocese. But our council is elected by representatives. So we're broken into zones. We have lay representatives from all over the diocese. So in a sense, it's a representative. It's intended to be somewhat of a representative body and make some pretty big decisions between conventions.
Any other inquiries for Kay? All right, Tempe.
Thank you. Interestingly, we are not the only entity, the only state with or diocese with a board of trustees, but some dioceses have only one corporate entity, which includes the responsibilities of trustees. Delaware has two corporate entities, diocesan council and the trustees. And it's always interesting for lawyers to figure out how they work together corporately and where the responsibilities lay. But that's something that just comes up occasionally. And it's one of the confusing things, as Kay said, it's a learning curve. Trustees are elected for 6 years, and I think there's a reason for that. One, it takes half of that time to really get a grasp and understand what the trustees actually do and what they've done in the past, because the trustees, which I learned from Cal Wick many years ago, has a long-term view of activities, not 10 years, but 100 years or more. And their responsibility is to oversee not just the immediate finances, but the assets of the diocese. The write-up is good, but I think a shorter statement is that the trustees oversee the funds, the property. The question of who owns the property is an interesting one because it's going to go between the two corporate entities and be resolved one way or the other. But the trustees have an endowment oversight. We have stewardship for trustee property, such as the radiators at Bishopstead. We hold funds in trust for others. We are doing that on behalf of St. Martha's and for St. Peter's, for instance, in 2 different ways. We provide support to A&D when it's needed. And when funds are sent to council, trustees can impose constraints, but they're usually very broad to keep things on track with the purpose and the goals. There are 6 trustees, and up until 4 or 5 years ago, these trustees seem to have been re-elected regularly, so that there was a long terms, literally 12, 18 and longer years. And that kind of expertise and institutional knowledge really helps in dealing with the investments and the protection of the assets of the diocese. The current trustees have all been elected in the last 6 years, except maybe Cal. He's got the longest standing. And Jim Bray is a trustee emeritus because he has long standing institutional views. And this provides a great deal of stability. The diocese funds are doing very well. So I take no credit for that because, as I keep telling them, I'm not a numbers person, but I can organize things. So I wish them luck, and I encourage any of you to ask trustees what's going on and to follow what's being done. Thank you.
Any questions or thoughts for Tempe? Okay, Ken and Judy.
If you don't mind, I believe Frank was going to go first as the treasurer, and I would follow after him.
That's fine, Frank.
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Frank Daniels. I am the new treasurer as of last September to the council. And it was somewhat interesting that I would follow Kay and Tempe because I just learned a lot more as to how this whole process works. I think as the treasurer to the council, I think the most important thing that I can do, along with Ken and Judith, is that to take the bishop's strategic goals for where he wants the parish to go in the short and long term, which again is going to have to involve some work, I suspect, in the long term with the trustees, as to where we want the parish in Delaware to go. So in order for us to do that, we have to look at what are the sources and uses of funds that we get. The budget is comprised mainly of 2 major sources of funds: the acceptances that we get from the parishes and the funds that we get from the trustees. There are approximately 19 different expense accounts in the budget that we have right now for council. The most important are the mission and ministry, which comes from Bishop Brown, which we try to bring to the council and provide council with options when we realize that the potential funding that we may want is not there. So how do we reconcile those differences? So I think it becomes very important, as I'm learning more this morning, of how the budget that is comprised of a number of different people that Ken and Judith is going to talk to you about is put together, how it's presented to the council, and then how we have the discussions at the council as to how we move forward and approve it. And of course, with the changes in how we are now doing the convention, that will change how we do the budget and how we present the budget and the numbers of budgets that we present to council. That's going to be kind of a learning experience for everyone, I think, for the next year or two. But that's really where we stand right now. And unless someone's got any, questions for us, we do our best to take what the bishop's guidance is, put that guidance into a dollar amount and into a budget and present it to the council and go from there.
Thank you, Frank. And now, Judy, would you like to follow up with that?
Yes, but I want to answer the bishop's question about how we are like other dioceses and build on to Tempe Steen. A lot of dioceses have one annual budget for the entire diocese. Here in Delaware, because we have two corporations, we have a budget for council and we have a budget for trustees, and they interact annually, monthly. One supports the other works with the funds they have been given. And all of that means that on an ongoing basis, there are members of the insurance committee that help all of us determine what comprehensive building, those kind of policies are, as well as making a recommendation as to our health benefits going forward into the next year. We have the investment committee, which Lydia will, if she will not talk about later, provides us with the distribution that comes out of Master Fund A on an annual basis. And the trustees approve that annually. And then there is a personnel committee that works with all matters personnel, the lay and the clergy employee handbooks, as well as helping us set the cost of living adjustment annually going forward. So the finance committee is getting information from them, goes back out to them, and then finally it ends up in the hands of finance, which take it to council for council to review and take action on. And now that occurs every January of the year following convention. And there's so much more. So look at that handbook that was provided. That resource link has more than you will want to know and will help you go to sleep when you read the audited financial statements.
Any questions for Frank or for Judy? So now when we go to convention, you understand a little bit more about the perplexities of budgets and all that kind of stuff and the work that's behind them. Now, Tempe is going to very quickly change her hat and come to us as talking about what the chancellor does.
Thank you. There are currently, and for the last some years, many years, there's been a chancellor and a vice chancellor. Ann Foster is the chancellor, thank goodness. She is a corporate lawyer with a major firm in Wilmington and knows all things corporate, which is essentially the work of the chancellor. I'm a follow along, I'm a tag along, and most of the work I have done has been for parishes referred to me for things like contracts and personnel and more typical legal questions, and mostly downstate. This year, this past 2 years actually, with Bishop Brown, it's been a much more collaborative activity. But the chancellor, is written up in the materials, is a lay communicant. It doesn't say anything about being a member of the bar, but the chancellor should definitely be a member of the Delaware Bar not because we go to court, but because that person is going to be learned in Delaware law, as well as constitutional and canon law. Doesn't mean that vice chancellors, of which there could be more than one, could specialize in some other area or bring expertise from out of state that's more national in scope that would be just as valid, especially in constitutional and canon work, because that's in the church. That's not limited to Delaware. But we are appointed for 3-year terms and appointed by the bishop and approved by the standing committee eventually. I want to encourage all of you to think about members of your parish who are attorneys who could provide full or partial service to the bishop as a chancellor or vice chancellor, as Ann and I are both seeking to step back. We're hanging around, but we're encouraging all of you who know other such people to step forward and encourage them to talk to the bishop, because it doesn't have to be an all-encompassing job like Ann has done. But we're available. We answer emails.
All
Mark,
right.
see your hand up there.
Yes, I have a question for Tempe. What is the relationship between the chancellor and the work of the disciplinary board, which has its own legal beagle working with it?
The chancellor is not allowed to work with the disciplinary board after certain points. So that's why you have your own legal that's set out in the canons.
So at the front edge, though, you and that person communicate, but once they get started dealing with a particular case, that's finished.
Yes, unless there's some unrelated question that might arise in some other relationship.
Okay, thank you.
So Tempe, my understanding is that the chancellor is in a disciplinary procedure. The chancellor is the lawyer for the diocese and for the bishop. So that if it goes to a legal procedure, which most cases don't, but in the event that it goes to a hearing panel where it actually gets into kind of a legal procedure, then the chancellor would be involved in terms of advising the bishop and the diocese, but not the disciplinary board, not part of the.
Right, not part of the disciplinary board. And I'm sorry, Ann isn't here to answer this because I've not had any direct experience with that, but I read the chancellor listserv discussions from around the country. And the way you stated is what I have read, that the chancellor is the advisor to the bishop. But not
and the board, the board actually has not a member of the board, but has a church attorney that actually gets involved very early and stays with the board through a case.
And I have read just recently that attorney cannot be the chancellor or vice chancellor.
Correct. That's in canon. Yeah, by canon. Yeah.
So Sarah, if I could add something. If any of our parishes have an issue around property or a liability claim, something happens, a parishioner gets hurt, a personnel issue, church insurance assigns attorneys and a legal team to work on that case should it go to court. So just throwing that out there as well.
And that's when it's covered, when it's an insurance claim. The things that have been referred to me have not been that type. They've been much more prosaic. And the other thing for chancellors and vice chancellors is to be aware of the potential conflict of interest. Because if in representing, giving advice to a local parish should come into a situation that is in conflict with the diocese standing committee or the trustees or some other entity, that would be a conflict and the vice chancellor or chancellor couldn't continue. So it starts getting into the more typical legal questions at that point. The parishes I've worked with have been referred to me by the bishop for general legal advice before they get into too much trouble. Michael?
Yeah, question. For Tempe, how, if at all, do you and Ann work with the individual parish chancellors, those parishes that have their own chancellors?
Very rarely, unless a question comes up that interacts with the diocese or one of the committees like the trustees or council or something like that. We worked with the chancellor for St. Peter's in working out a fund that was being shifted to trustee oversight, for instance.
Any other thoughts for Tempe? She has many other hats, but those are the two she's wearing today. John Pumphrey?
Okay, I'm ready.
There you go.
So the Commission on Ministry seeks to advance ministry within the Episcopal Church of Delaware. All of you are familiar with the Catechism, and the Catechism says the ministers of the church are lay persons first, bishops, priests, and deacons, and also states the mission of the church is to restore all people to unity with God and each other in Christ through the ministry of all its members. The Commission supports clergy and congregations in bringing forward new leaders to be ordained, and we partner with and offer to clergy, congregations, and the people of the diocese opportunities to discern gifts for ministry and strengthen life in Christ through our baptismal covenant. We assist and advise the bishop on all of these matters. COM members are both lay and ordained. They're appointed by the bishop. The Commission may ask others to help fulfill aspects of its work. We operate by an agreed upon standards of practice statement and establish annual goals. The COM, or the Commission's work, touches lives and influences what happens in the church in a host of ways. For example, the process for those seeking holy orders is established and overseen by the Commission, which involves the applicant and his, her, or their family, a sponsoring priest, congregation, the bishop, standing committee, and in effect, the future faith communities which that person will serve. Many people are affected by the work of the Commission. The documents guiding the Holy Orders process are on the diocesan website, and you can review those and look at those. The Commission bears an awesome responsibility just in this regard to every party involved. In 2021, an initiative called Fire and Formation will be ignited. The mission of Fire and Formation is to aid and encourage the laity to discover their passion for Christ, deepen their spirituality, and fully live out their baptismal covenant. Fire and Formation provides a framework of opportunities to enhance the discernment of the vocation of the baptized, such as website resources of programs within the diocese and beyond, retreats, webinars, core books and bibliographies, with book club possibilities, films and videos, covenant groups, which we hope to launch soon, and a universe of formation possibilities. Bishop Brown set the Commission on a new path for this diocese when he asked us to move more fully attend to the ministry of the baptized. And admittedly, as a Commission, we have a way to go, hence Fire and Formation. I think in this diocese, we've all lived too long with the Commission hidden away, doing some specialized thing called holy orders. The canons of the Episcopal Church also state a commission on ministry shall assist the bishop in determining present and future needs for ministry in the diocese. We see that there is opportunity for all of us to do more together in concerted and coordinated ways to advance ministry within the Episcopal Church of Delaware. Think about it this way, that everything about our evangelism efforts, invite, welcome, and connect, the new Racial Justice Commission, the outreach of congregations, the special missions of the diocese, our daily lives are expressions of baptismal ministry. The commission would like to say, let's name this, claim this, do this, celebrate this as disciples together. At present, we, members of your commission, are small, maybe a little too small. There's 9 members of us. We're a committed group of ordained and lay, and I am honored to be the chair of this commission formed under Bishop Brown, and I hold its present members in the highest regard and benefit always from their wisdom. I'm happy to respond to any questions you may have.
I don't see any hands. Thank you, John. And moving on to our next presenter is Margie.
Thank you.
Unmuted Margie.
I get it eventually. So I'm reporting or presenting on behalf of the disciplinary board, but I'm actually going to talk mostly about our process because the disciplinary process includes more than the members of the board. So most of us, I think, probably remember, or many of us anyway, remember back when the scandal of clergy misconduct came into public view in a big way. The Episcopal Church was intentional early on when that happened in setting practices in place to both prosecute and prevent such abuse, initially modeled on the military justice system. The canons of the General Convention of the Episcopal Church regarding church discipline are known as Title IV. And in 2009, major revisions in Title IV recast it in a theological context, making clergy discipline first and foremost a process of discernment, mediation, and pastoral response. Though pointed toward justice, this process is unlike a civil legal process in that it is not primarily adversarial. The focus is on reconciliation, not punishment. Canon 1 of Title IV sets the theological context for the process. And we begin at the board, we begin every meeting with a reading of Canon 1. So I'd like to read it to you now. Quote, by virtue of baptism, all members of the church are called to holiness of life and accountability to one another. The church and each diocese shall support their members in their life in Christ and seek to resolve conflicts by promoting healing, repentance, forgiveness, restitution, justice, amendment of life, and reconciliation among all involved or affected. This title applies to members of the clergy who have, by their vows at ordination, accepted additional responsibilities and accountabilities for doctrine, discipline, worship, and obedience. So the structure of the board is kind of set out in your resource guide that you received yesterday in preparation for the meeting. So I'm not going to repeat that here, but rather I'll briefly outline our process, which is clearly prescribed by canon. So first, a complaint is made to a diocesan intake officer. Intake officers are appointed by the bishop. We have 3 in Delaware. The intake officers are not actually members of the board, but they do attend our meetings. Anyone may contact an intake officer to report concerns about the behavior of a member of the clergy. The intake officer will listen, answer questions about the process, and offer pastoral care and response. If the intake officer finds that the alleged conduct may constitute an offense, the intake officer takes the complaint to the reference panel. The reference panel is a group consisting of the bishop, the disciplinary board president, and the intake officers. The reference panel meets in the context of prayer, examines the complaint, and refers it to the next step, which could be a pastoral response or directive. It could be further investigation, conciliation, an agreement with the bishop, or if necessary, a conference or hearing panel. These panels are appointed from among the members of the board and go deeper and more formally into the complaint. Every complaint is unique and Title IV is detailed and complex. Bishop Brown and the board are committed to a fair and proficient process. And so to equip ourselves, we take advantage of excellent training events that are coordinated by Province 3. And on our own part, the board meets at least quarterly for formation and training, mostly using case studies. It's serious stuff and it's challenging, but we find it richly rewarding. Another strong feature of the new Title IV is the requirement that the bishop provide an advisor to the complainant, the accused cleric, and any others who are party to the complaint. Advisors support, assist, counsel, and in some cases speak for the complainant or clergy member. They must be familiar with the provisions and objectives of Title IV. To that end, we formed a group of advisors to be trained in Title IV and committed to companion individuals through the process. I also want to note that at the last General Convention of the Episcopal Church, they addressed how our church has been complicit in or failed to attend to the reality of sexual abuse, harassment, and exploitation in the past. The church wanted to take concrete steps to recognize that this had happened and to make efforts to see that it doesn't happen again. To this end, the convention enacted legislation to lift the statute of limitations for 3 years on reporting cases involving sexual misconduct. So as long as a complaint is reported before December 31st of this year, 2021, it doesn't matter how long ago the abuse occurred. So as our webpage states, quote, the Episcopal Church in Delaware is committed to an unwavering response of justice and compassion if clergy misconduct occurs, and committed to healing and reconciliation. The diocese and the Episcopal Church recognize that responding to allegations of misconduct requires determination, sensitivity, and respect for all persons involved. So I am very proud and honored to be a part of this very committed group as we continually learn and grow in an effort to make the Episcopal Church in Delaware a truly safe, compassionate, and reconciling community. Thank you.
Thank you, Margie. Any questions for Margie or process or whatever?
This is Frank Daniels. Margie,
Yes.
I have a question.
Mhm.
When you started discussing it, you started talking about how, I guess it had to do with the sexual misconduct, how the process was designed around the UCMJ. Did I understand that correctly? Versus civilian law? UCMJ is very different.
The military justice originally, when they first did it, which would have been in the 90s, I think, it was modeled on the military justice system. That became very adversarial. An enormous part of the responsibility and power lay with the bishop. And it wasn't working very well for us. So there was a tremendous change in approach that was put into place canonically in 2009, so that it's no longer that at all. We corrected that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Because
that's really
used
an
to have
important
UCMJ.
distinction. It's
Yeah.
it's no longer
I-
a legal process. It's a much, yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I had UCMJ authority when I was a commander,
Mhm,
and you have to be very careful with it. You really do.
mhm.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Margie. Ken and Martha. I have to find you on my screen, but
Yeah, here I am. Good morning,
Here-
all.
good.
Martha Kirkpatrick. I'm the canon to the ordinary. I'm also the chief of staff of the Mission Support Office. So in some ways, the buck stops with me. I think the most important thing I really wanted to get across is that, as our name implies, we are here to support the mission and ministries of the parishes. We're not the bishop's office. We're not the diocesan office. This name change is intentional, and it really reflects our desire to focus, to be a team, and to bring the resources that we can bring to support you as governance bodies and you as parishes. That involves everything from the day-to-day, like the processing of payroll that we do for several parishes, all the way to strategic thinking about the direction of the church. Judy and the bishop and I all serve on a number of church-wide organizations. So we're kind of the eyes and ears of things that are happening nationally and that are emerging. In order to be able to assist all of you in church vitality, church growth, and also a big part of what we do is the health and well-being of clergy and families. I'd say the sort of the three big themes, if you will, that I thought of when I'm thinking about what we aspire to be and what we're trying to be is adaptive. Things come up, like, sometimes a pandemic or the Boy Scout lawsuit. They just sort of come out of the blue sometimes, or it might be a crisis in a parish. And how can we be the most helpful? There are things that we can do in one place that make a lot more sense than having 34 parishes do individually. We also strive to be anticipatory of stuff coming down the pike. For instance, the parochial report has undergone a major rewrite. And we're talking right now about how to get information out to you all so that we can be helpful in putting that thing together. And the third is strategic, thinking long-term about the future of the church and the ways, for example, I'll just give you one little piece that's been a lot on my mind in the year and a half that I've been in this work, and that is that we have gone from having something like 16,000 active clergy in the Episcopal Church to 4,000 active clergy in the Episcopal Church. That has a huge impact on transitions, on the life of the church, on how easy it is to find a new priest when your priest retires. So that's just an example of the kinds of work we're trying to do. So I guess, I ask you to hold us accountable to you for being the support and acting as a team that we are aspiring to do and to be. So happy to take any questions or thoughts.
Okay.
Maybe just a summary of the functions that are that are available at the Mission Support Office, and I think it's in the write-up, but just
Budget and finance. Judy's talked to you a lot about that. support for clergy and families, communications. As you all know, that's a big part of what we do, from the net to the communion to the bishop's regular addresses. Congregational transitions. If you are, if your rector is retiring, we're very heavily involved in helping support the parish as it transitions, makes a new transition in leadership. Church growth and vitality. We support the, we help staff and support all the Invite, Welcome, Connect and all of that, those kinds of things. Training and support for clergy, whether it's safe church training, support for the College of Clergy. I work closely with Chuck Weiss, who's the Dean of the College of Clergy, in planning those events. Payroll processing and administrative support to the bishop. And of course, we also include Camp Arrowhead and Memorial House. Evangelism, tech support. Many of you have taken advantage of as you've all had to go online with your services and go from, somebody standing there with an iPhone to something more sophisticated and reliable. We've really striven to help you with that, both financially and technologically. Ecumenical interfaith collaboration. We're connected with our Christian colleagues and also are connected with interfaith work, and also just try and stay connected to what's going on in the state secularly, and the need for the mission that we all support. So that's kind of the run through.
Well, you're chief of staff. You must have a staff of 25 people to do all that. So that's amazing. That's a lot.
Any other thoughts for Martha? Questions for Martha? All right, Bishop, would you like to talk about the Leadership Council?
I would be happy to. See, Tempe had, I think she was about to...
Sorry, Tempe, I didn't mean to.
That's okay. I just like to point out to everybody, especially anybody who hasn't had to deal with the mission support, that they are incredible. I've benefited as a trustee, but even more, St. Martha's has benefited in very many ways through direct support and indirect support. And I think having Martha explain all of that today across the diocese is really helpful, because it's such an open and available set of help. They answer questions, they respond to emails. It's great. It's really been terrific. Thank you.
Thank you, Tempe. Bishop, would you like to?
Yes, thank you. What the Leadership Council came into being about 6 months ago, and the Leadership Council was formed by 5 folks, and but it's supported by a number of others. And the presidents of the standing committee, the vice president of council, the vice presidents of trustees, and the dean of the College of Clergy. And the primary reason the 5 of us get together is to coordinate. There's a lot of different things these different governance bodies, or in the case of the College of Clergy, which I'll explain in just a second, are doing on a week-to-week or month-to-month basis that COVID helped make clear what was probably obvious to us before, we just hadn't put into place. And that is, there's a lot of coordination that we can do if the leaders of those groups just had a sense of what the others were doing and planning. And that's what the Leadership Council is for the 5 of us to talk about what are our priorities, what's coming up on our agendas, and what are the things where we expect we can see that we are going to need help from another body, or how our work can cross-pollinate. So we have been meeting pretty much weekly, bi-weekly in the last couple of months, but now back weekly again since the pandemic really got raging. it's supporting us. We've the Chancellor, Ann Foster, has been a part of that, as well as the Reverend Dr. Martha Iueka, who I think most of you, if not all of you, know. She's a priest of this diocese. Before she was ordained, she was a physician, a pediatric physician, and a researcher. So many, many years of clinical experience and experience on the drug side of medicine. She's been a great help and resource. And then we're supported by a number of members of the Mission Support Office who come regularly to those meetings. The fifth member of the group that I mentioned is Chuck Weiss, the Dean of the College of Clergy. And there may be a phrase that's a little unusual, the College of Clergy. I think of a college as where you go and get a degree in something. And this is not the college in that sense of awarding academic degrees. It's college in also an old sense of colleagues, of collegiality. And so we use that word to really emphasize the fact that the bishops, priests, and deacons of this diocese are all colleagues in our shared ministry to Jesus Christ, our colleagues in supporting this church, and thus in supporting each other. And so the College of Clergy is led by a dean that I appoint, and then there's a steering committee of groups who help put together regular gatherings for our clergy to help to keep us rooted in prayer, to keep us educated about current events, and to help us just with the practice of ministry. So I'm really pleased with our College of Clergy and the work that we do, and I'm really thankful for the collegiality of this diocese. It's a gift to serve here. And the Leadership Council, in the end, it's not a decision-making body. There's plenty of governance bodies, but it is one is about coordination and very much advising me in this time of COVID and all of 20 and 2021. It is one of, like many of the ideas that were born in this time that I expect are going to keep going because it's just a good idea. We're probably not going to need to meet weekly when COVID ends, but I have every expectation that the Leadership Council will continue to meet at least each month.
Bishop, I missed the members again.
Sure
if you could.
Sure thing. It's myself, the President of the Standing Committee, the Vice President of Council, the Vice President of Trustees, and the Dean of the College of Clergy.
I didn't include you in the 5. I was thinking it was a +5.
Thanks for the question.
Any questions, thoughts for the bishop about Leadership Council? Everyone has been sitting dutifully, and if you're like I am, about now you need to get up and move around a little bit. So we're going to take about a 10-minute break. So it's 10:30. So at 10:40 we'll come back together, and you are welcome to move around, get a cup of coffee, take the dog for a walk, whatever you need to do. But we'll just leave this. I'm going to leave my Zoom on, and we'll gather in about 10 minutes. Go in peace. Most of us are back, I'm hoping. All right. We've had wonderful descriptions about what bodies do, what are the challenges, what are the joys, how awesome it is to serve on one of these leadership bodies as they, take vision and reality and God's calling us forward and put them all together. And it's, you can hear as people describe their what they are doing, there is a lilt in the voice, and there is a commitment, and that's why everything works out the way it does, and that working together makes our vision even broader. We thought that it might be an interesting thing to see how this actually has worked in the past, and I said to the bishop on a couple of occasions, when we were doing all the questions and interviewing candidates for bishop, one of the questions that nobody thought of was, how would you like to be the bishop in a pandemic that would shut our world down and suspend worship and have us re-envision and reimagine much of what we do as churches and as the voice of witness in this world. And we didn't ask that question of him. I don't know what we were thinking. We just glossed over that one. But here we are. And so it has been an interesting way to watch these bodies work together. I mean, as the bishop just spoke, the leadership council came out. I was one Wednesday or Thursday evening. I looked at my phone and it was like 7 o'clock at night, and it was the bishop's, name coming up. And I thought, oh my, what have I done? And then what it really was a time to get people together to talk about, what do we do? What do we do? When, back in last March, when this was all brand new to us, how do we even begin this? And so the case study, it will be a chance for interaction, but the bishop is going to lead us through how we as the church, the Episcopal Church in Delaware, have navigated the pandemic, being faithful witnesses, pastoral care, all those things. So Bishop, I'll mute.
Thank you. This it was thank you for the invitation to do this, Sarah. And by the way, thank you, and to the folks who have planned today to make it happen. I just want to say thank you for the work that you put in today for this. And we call it case study, maybe a case conversation, may be a little bit better way to describe it, but to talk for a minute about what it means to be a diocese, and then look at what we've done the last few months. And so one thing I want to start out with, and this, I'm hoping to really, when I say conversation, really to hear from the folks who've just been called to this ministry, to the diocesan level. We've heard a good bit from the folks who are leading teams, and that's great. They're part of the conversation now too, but I'm really hoping for folks who are members of the board, these various boards, to be part of this conversation in particular. And so, first, just a question, and that is when I think about the diocese, I think about all 34 parishes. And this map is in your in the handouts, the resource booklet, and it's a very important part of the resource booklet. And I encourage you to refer to it. So you'll see that we're spread across the entire state, all 3 counties. Now the county lines are not marked here, but if you were to draw a line north here between right at Smyrna, Smyrna's just about on the line between Newcastle and Sussex County. And so Smyrna is in Kent County. I'm sorry, what did I say? Kent County, between Newcastle and Kent County. And then the line between Kent County and Sussex goes right through Milford. In fact, the Muspelheim River goes right through Milford, and that's the county line. And so Christ Church is on the Kent County side of the line. So we have these 5 churches in Kent County, and then the rest in Sussex. And so, it's interesting to me when people use the phrase the diocese, what is it that they have in mind? And I ask you because I'm generally kind of curious. Some people, examples, people will say, we went to the diocese for help with a roofing problem, or the diocese won't let us worship actually, don't say the diocese won't let us worship, I say the bishop, and that's accurate. But, folks refer to the diocese all the time. What do people mean by that? I mean, what do you think they mean by that? It's a philosophical question. Give us a chance to think about it.
Bishop, I think people mean beyond my decision-making power. That is, it's not parochial, it's diocesan. It's the diocese. It's a corporation, the next step up.
I think it could also mean beyond our parish's capabilities, not maybe financially that they need assistance, or maybe just a broader perspective of something that they want to get done. So it's not so much that it's beyond their ability to decide, but beyond their ability to know whether or not it's the right decision.
I think it also means going there for the resources that have been outlined for us just today, to look for guidance and help and support at the higher level, so that if we need more financial help, for example, I remember in one of my churches, the vestry just, didn't have very good financial practices. So I called upon the diocese to send Judy down, I think it was. And we had a whole huge meeting where she outlined, good financial practices for a parish. And so I think it's to take advantage of the offerings and the resources that the diocese has the ability to fund that the parishes don't.
I think of it as something that all the parishes belong to, that we're all members of, and we go to for different reasons, but we're all part of that one body, all the various parishes.
Yeah, so I think of it geographically too. And I think it's been helpful, by the way, that you're talking about the staff now as the mission support staff. So what I would have called the diocese, I am trying to retrain myself to call mission support, because I use the diocese for a variety of different meanings or different. So all of the above, but also sort of a geographical thing. And I'm working on redefining and using different terms. It's helpful.
I think in terms, when I think of the diocese, I think in a couple of different terms. As a parishioner, I think of the diocese as kind of the mothership, if you will, of all of us. I mean, we're all one big family, so to speak, even though we might be spread all over the place, but it's the place we all go to. It's like the going home place, whether it's we need support, help, encouragement, guidance, being reminded of the rules at times, if you will. But again, I think it provides the structure for the family, if you will.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Well, in that regard, however, if we want to start using family as an image, we want to be aware that the diocese as a name becomes the place where we can offload or shift our responsibilities for things. We can ask for permissions because we don't want to take responsibility. We can blame the diocese. We can use this diocese to do everything or to be responsible for everything that we as churches or clergy or individuals want to shift it to, which is part of the scapegoating, whatever, family dynamic, whatever system dynamic you want to use. The diocese becomes this vehicle for all of that.
Are you, by virtue of election to the work that you're doing now, are you now part of the diocese?
Heaven forbid, Bishop, heaven forbid.
I think we're all part of the diocese to begin with. I have found, it's been interesting. I don't think I thought much about the word. The word diocese is a perfectly good word. It's not a bad word. We have come to refer to ourselves as the Episcopal Church in Delaware. as a way to emphasize, well, the map I just showed you, that we are one church with 34 outposts. We're not 34 parishes that have voluntarily come by once a year to do convention together, but we're one church. And in fact, we're in our diocese is part of a larger collection of dioceses. I found it as I become a bishop, it's just interesting that people will just say the diocese, and I've really tried to work to help clarify what that means. So for example, people say, boy, we're really thankful, Bishop, that the diocese sent us money. Thank you for sending us money. And I'll say, well, I actually didn't do that. That was diocesan council. That's the council budget that sent you money. And people are like, oh, what does council do? Like, well, they send you money but you are them, right? You as us. We are diocese. We are the diocese.
Bishop, I like the analogy that I think it was John Pumphrey used about family. We have family members all over the United States, or maybe even all over the world. Like my family, for instance, I'll use as an example. I have a daughter in England, a daughter in Middletown, and a daughter in Buffalo, New York. Now, they're all over the place, but they're all a member of the Malcolm family. Mm-hmm. And, so I think of the diocese like that. We're all these different churches, but we're all a member of the Episcopal family, the Episcopal Church in Delaware family.
I would only submit this notion about family and system, however. Families are about intimacy and systems are about power. And I don't want to be misunderstood by referencing family for the diocese. At one level, it's a nice, convenient term, but we're a system. And so issues of power and authority are prominent.
Mm-hmm.
Someone once said to me when someone had referred to their church family, that we tend to forget that not all families are sweet, happy, wonderful, joyful groups of people. And that oftentimes families are dysfunctional. And so they were actually encouraging us not to use the word family for the church itself, but to use the word community.
Now, I found that when I've been asked about my diocese, I have referred to it as my diocese. So I'll say my diocese, this is what we're doing. So I see us, as I was saying, 34, but we're all part of the one diocese. And so that's how I refer to our diocese as my diocese.
I think that to a lot of people, like sitting in the pews, a diocese is a term or an entity that they really don't fully understand. They do understand their parish and how their parishes work. But beyond that, the diocese is this entity that's out there. And while it may, John, have authority in some things and infrastructure for the whole community or family, whichever you choose, at the end of the day, the average parishioner probably is not all that in tune with what a diocese is and what a diocese does. And perhaps that's something for us as leadership to begin educating, especially if we want to make that switch from, calling ourselves a diocese to the Episcopal Church in Delaware. If people understand more what it does, they might think of things a little differently.
I would, yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I would agree with that. Oftentimes, I think diocese appears to be kind of there, over there, wherever over there means. And then people are just in the pew, and there's a sense of disconnect on the part of many. And that comes through loud and clear sometimes when some people balk at sending acceptance, to the diocese, because there's a sense of I think maybe they don't understand the support or, the mission of the diocese, so to speak. So it feels like a separate body and not understanding that we are in this together. And I found that to be true for a long time, and not just in where I am now, but before. I found that yeah, Helen knows. That was very prevalent in Virginia. So
it seems to me that if we think about this Episcopal Church in Delaware as this thing together, that the more we think about that, the more likely we are to begin to think about what does that really mean. For 34 outposts, we still operate to some degree, in my view, as a congregational model, and we don't think about the force and the power of impact we could have if we thought more about being together. And we tend to isolate ourselves with whatever resources are available in our neighborhoods. We're like the school systems. Some school systems are better than others because they're in different neighborhoods. Rather than thinking the church needs to be the separate places, how could we resource each other in ways that are very different than what we've done in the past? Stewardship might look very differently in the future than it is now.
I've been in a lot of annual meetings, and you usually get to the point where you're reviewing the budget and somebody sees a diocesan acceptance, and that's about the only understanding they have of the diocese and what it does and why do we give all this money to the diocese. And a lot of people don't understand where that money actually goes and what it does. A lot of it's really about supporting ministry and outreach. And Bishop, a lot of you use the term, we use the term family. Our brothers and sisters at this church or at this church or that church, our brothers and sisters in the diocese, that does have familial connotations. And I think that can also help break down some barriers of, we're the church in Newcastle, we're the church in Middletown, we're the church at Bethany Beach. Kind of using those terms to incorporate who we are, the Episcopal Church in Delaware, we can kind of go a long way in helping people understand what it's all about.
Having seen this syndrome, for lack of a better way to put it, of being 34 entities and part of a larger whole, but not really understanding what the larger whole is or what the larger whole does. I see this as a stewardship opportunity, not just for individual parishes, but a stewardship opportunity for the Episcopal Church in Delaware as a whole, to be able to reach out to one another and just to say, here we are, this is what we do, this is who we are for you, and to encourage parishes to reach out to one another instead of, as John says, just going within ourselves, to reach out to one another and to reach out ecumenically to the other parishes in our neighborhoods. We don't have to do this by ourselves. And so there's a lot that could be done in the stewardship area that has nothing to do with money at all, and everything to do with relationship and who we are. Throwing that out there.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of relationships, as I'm thinking about this, I'm reflecting on what it is that unites us in that relationship. What is it how do we call ourselves as people in relationship? And the things that come to mind for me are our baptism, the prayer book, and our ecclesiology, our system of governance, in addition, of course, to the geography. And so it's helpful for me sometimes, not to state the obvious, but just to touch base with those foundational things by which I define myself as an Episcopalian with all of you.
An example that comes to mind, even though some may think of it more as outreach, but it's just that the biblical example of when the church somewhere needed help, and Paul's like, well, we're collecting for this church. I don't know to what extent it could be useful as an example of that mutual mutual extension of resources and support. Anyway, that just came to mind.
I think the phrase, the diocese, it's fascinating to think about and to hear it when we use it or when others use it. And so I have found, and I'd like to encourage us to not discourage use whatsoever. There's nothing wrong with the word. It's a rather technical one, right? It refers to a particular type of church governance, and that's the one we have, so it's completely accurate. But it, as we're saying, it can kind of just obscure the fundamental relationship. I think for a lot of people, it focuses way too much on the hierarchy. And it sounds like if you're in the pew, Jonathan, as you were saying, that, yeah, we're here. And then the diocese is this thing up here, this other body that we may have representatives to, but it's still, it's another body instead of a sense of family, as imperfect a metaphor as that certainly is. Still, that it helps with that sense of sort of not just hierarchy. And so what? Go ahead, Ruth.
No, I'll wait for you to finish, Bishop.
Well, that's, I think part of what we're doing today is incredibly important in that our governance bodies and the various diocesan level bodies can very easily work year to year, month to month, week to week, year to year, without really thinking much about what the other bodies are doing. And that interrelationship is just really important, so we kind of know a sense of that larger whole. Ruth?
Yeah, well, I was trying to understand how this, and I think you just made a connecting point for me, but we are a hierarchical church, and I'm proud of and glad for that, because that structure provides order, meaning, and relationship, so that I understand my relationship to the standing committee. I understand my relationship. And if we've not done a good enough job communicating what that means within the diocese, that's one thing. But I don't want to lose that ancient and traditional structure and hierarchy that helps us. I mean, the bishop is the symbol of the unifying force of the diocese. If we're not an Episcopal church, throw out the bishop, right? And we'll become a congregational church and just get together and all share good things. But that's not who we are. We are a church that understands the orders of ministry to be fourfold, and each in its own order, each with its own responsibility and charge, each with its own place. And the governance bodies brings us together across the four orders of ministry so that we are collaborating, each with our gifts, each with our calling, and each from our particular location, because Christ Church Christiana 100 in Greenville, Wilmington, Delaware is not St. Paul's Georgetown. We minister in very different contexts and with very different histories and traditions. And St. Peter's, Lewis, what was the first congregation of the diocese? I think about the history and the traditions of the first and the last. And I think St. Nicholas was the last parish in the diocese, and is small, but sustaining and planting those seeds and harvesting things and doing the same work that Christ Church is doing in different ways and in a different context. But I think for me that the idea of a diocese unifies us to a structure and to the Episcopal Church as a whole. And without continuing to talk about our tradition, our history, I mean, we are a church of tradition, reason, and scripture, and all of that provides us with order. So I'm very, when you ask the question, do we consider ourselves a part of a diocese because we're on these boards and committees? No, by virtue of our membership in an Episcopal congregation, we're part of the Diocese of Delaware. And if I'm not communicating or teaching that well enough to my people, that's a different matter. But they understand that they appoint representatives who represent them at convention, but make decisions on behalf of the whole. So I guess I'm kind of curious about why we would want to give away or not emphasize that powerful tradition and structure which has provided us order and allows us to be a body working together.
Amen. I would even say I wouldn't want to do anything that would give that away at any time.
And carrying that to a higher level, to another level in the hierarchy, it's important for us to remember and for us to share with our fellow members of the Episcopal Church in Delaware that we are a part of the larger whole, and that larger whole has levels. I mean, we're a part of the province, we're a part of the national church, and as we minister together, we not only share with our comrades here in the Diocese of Delaware, in the 34 congregations that make up the Episcopal Church in Delaware, but we share with the entire church, and we minister with the entire church in ways that are very important.
John Michael, one amendment to that: we are not a national church. We're an international
right.
church.
I'm sorry, I misspoke. You're right. We are a larger church. We are the Episcopal Church in the United States. Whatever our title is, Patty. Correct me. I'm not being politically correct, but you get the drift, I hope.
Yeah.
I get
we are
the
the
drift.
Episcopal Church.
We are the Domestic and Foreign Missionary Society.
Exactly.
What I hear in that is a reminder that just like so many words that get bad connotation, hierarchy does not mean bad.
No.
Right. In fact, we have found time and time again throughout our history that hierarchy, right, it can provide strength and good order and health, just like when people want to talk, just like good boundaries, that you have to set up boundaries in order to be a well-defined organism, to know who you are as a person, et cetera, et cetera. So hierarchy is important as it need not be thought of as a negative. In fact, it is very much who we are.
And we could also call it structure, if that's a better word.
Structure. Mm-hmm.
As I sit here and listen to everybody in their feed into this, one of the things that I'm always struck by is that we want to be inclusive, we want to be sensitive, and the prayer that we did, Oscar Romero prayer, I think sometimes if we do more teaching, sort of like what we're doing today, we can keep, as Ruth said, those things that make us the Episcopal Church, but do more teaching. Like you say, hierarchy is not necessarily a bad word. Those are the kinds of things I think that we need to teach that help people feel, oh, well, again, like Jonathan said, to help those people in the pews understand the words that we use and what they mean. But I think sometimes we are so ready, oh, well, this word offends somebody, so let's change it and, say something else. Where no, this is what we really mean, but this is what it means in what we're saying. Because I think you're right, Bishop, when people hear the word hierarchy, they think, oh, here they go again, a bunch of people sitting up there on a hill, making a lot of rules for me that aren't pertinent to me. So again, it's just my thought on it, that sometimes maybe rather than changing, we need to teach more.
I'd like to leave open for anybody who has something on the heart that hasn't had a chance to say something before I hand back over to Sarah. And Pat, I would just comment on your note that teaching more is right. And part of the way we teach is in the way we do our business day in and day out, right? Week in, we got month to month in our, and by moving our meetings, so many decisions we'll get to make in our various governing and other bodies is, when we have the opportunity, can these meetings be open and transparent? Are we inviting people to be participatory? Are we inviting, when people are using the word diocese, are we encouraging people to stop and say, hey, well, tell me more. Let's think about what you're saying. That's diocesan council that actually does that, or no, that's the bishops, or no, that's the mission support X, Y, and Z. We have real opportunity to teach out, not so much in classrooms, but very much more in those day-to-day interactions that we all have now as members of these bodies. Not to chastise people for not understanding, but to help them understand more fully.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone else have anything they might like to add? Well, Sarah, I did not follow our guide. We were going to start off talking a little bit about the diocese, then move to COVID, but this conversation proved to be incredibly rich, and I'm thankful for it. So back to you, my friend.
Well, thank you. And I think that, that identification of diocese and how we function and how I think you're right, is COVID will be with us. There'll be plenty of other opportunities, but a fruitful conversation. I have the wonderful opportunity now of saying to you all, you have 45 minutes to have a break, get something to eat, ponder what has been stirred up in your heart this morning. Come back with questions or anything that just kind of percolates. And as we close this, and I want to let people have lunch, one of the things that's helpful for me is, first of all, I have to write things down. I still keep a paper calendar because I can do the computer thing, but it doesn't sit in my brain in the same way. And when I leave a morning like this, no matter how fruitful it is for me, usually by the time I've gotten home, there's something else that's occurred to me, like, what am I going to eat? What am I going to do? And so I encourage you, for me, what helps is to write down some learning or something that I take from this day. And I usually write it at the bottom of my calendar. So when I go back to it, I go, oh yes, I remember that day. And this was something that spoke to me on that morning. So I invite you to, today or whenever makes sense to you, something that you have, has, tickled you on today, and something you might like to learn more about, or a practice that you take in. I mean, since I just went off standing committee, I made it a practice in my daily prayers to pray for people on the standing committee. Not a rote form or whatever, but those people. So it was a daily discipline about a changed daily discipline in my life for those days. That made me feel more connected with those people, made me feel more connected with that mission. So you might leave here today with a goal, something that you would like to do. If that's praying for Beth, praying for counsel, praying for whatever it is, if it's a conversation. And then when you meet with your leadership committee, to go back and maybe offer that, and as a way of strengthening the ties that bind us all, family, community, however we name it. So I invite you to write, for me, it works best writing it, but whatever way makes sense to you, something from today that you will carry forth from here. And now you have 45 minutes for lunch. We will come back for anti-bias training. If you have any questions about anti-bias training, if you have taken it, whatever, talk to Kathleen, because I don't know. Yeah. Well, Helen, I see a hand.
Hey, Sarah.
I just
Yes,
want to make sure that we come back to this Zoom link for the
Yeah.
antibiotic training? Thank you.
Yes, you come back to this link.
Another
Yeah.
clarification, some of us have already done the anti-bias training, so are we expected to come back again?
No, you are not. And if you've already taken it from August until now, you do not have to take it again. If you have questions about that, check with Kathleen.
No, that's not quite my question. My question is, I understand I don't have to take it, but it's in terms of time. Do we come back? There says closing thoughts and prayers. I'm just thinking time.
That's a good question. And I would invite you to come back at 1:30, and we'll have a short couple minutes to pull things together. Thank you, Ketlin. Thank you. The first time I said, when we were working on this, I said, you can have a beautiful, incredible pie. And the first piece is always a little messy. There's some edges that don't, second piece is far easier. But the first piece, so today is the first piece of pie in this orientation idea. And so we learn a lot. And thank you for that question.
Yeah, I would just make a suggestion. It would have been nice to maybe to close it out for those of us who could then just leave in.
Well, we can do that. I mean, can we do that, Kathleen? You're muted.
Sure. Bishop?
Yeah, I would say that if it's convenient to come back, do so. But if not, that we'll also be able to have a post survey that will allow you to submit your thoughts on what we did today. But that's a good design point for the design team. Like, yeah, that's a good point. So very good.
I have a question, Sarah.
Yes.
On this link, are you going to close the meeting now and we have to open with the link, or are we going to just leave the link open until 12 o'clock when we restart?
Kathleen?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Are
chat.
Are we going to leave this link open? Or do you want people to close out and re-enter?
Oh, no. So I'm going to just stop my video and just do some other work. So it will remain open. Okay. Our leaders for the anti-bias training will be logging in with me a little bit early. So if you're still on, you might hear some last minute just planning, but no, I'm just going to keep it open.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Rita. Any other thoughts or questions?
I will just say that thank you for this morning. It's been good, and I just won't come back at 1:30. So this is my opportunity to say thank you and goodbye to all.
Well, Ketlin, I know where you live, so I can call you. I can call you and get information.
You can find me.
Yes. All right. Thank you all. We bless this time that we have had together. We bless the conversation. We realize that these are yet further seeds that we are planting, and they are further seeds that we will nurture and we will watch grow, and that there is a great deal of satisfaction in being a worker and not a master builder. But direct us, God, direct us, O Lord, to your vision and to accomplishing all that you have in your will for us. And now let us enjoy some respite and some lunch. And for those who are not joining us, coming back, go in peace. And for those that are coming back, we will receive you back in peace in 45 minutes. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. All right, I think we have everybody back from lunch and whatever things they needed to do. And now I'm going to turn all this over so we can engage and be attentive and learn. Thank you.
Wonderful. So good afternoon. I am the canon for mission in the Diocese of Maryland. I am Chris McLeod, and I have my trustee partner over here, Canon Stuart Wright, who is the canon for transitions and human resources, also in the Diocese of Maryland. And today we are going to do a session with you on anti-bias. Now, anti-bias is often also incorporated in the work of our anti-racism curriculums. I think this is pulled out specifically. Workshops have been developed for congregations who are in the process of searching for new clergy. And so we had to make some adjustments to this session because you're not looking for clergy, but you are a leadership body, and you still equally need to talk and discuss and recognize that first and foremost, every one of us have some level of bias, implicit bias. It's just part of who we all are. And because of that, we often make decisions and choices that we are unaware of because of that bias. I am going to once again This is what happens when I screen share. I lose everyone's faces, and I also can't find my controls. So I'm just going to screen share and do what I normally do, and I'm back here somewhere. So let's see.
We can see you.
Oh, all right. So again, this is anti-bias workshop. We call this Eyes Wide Open. And as we start all of our workshops, we will start with an opening prayer that Stuart will lead us through.
Let us pray. Oh God, you made us in your own image and redeemed us through Jesus, your Son. Look with compassion on the whole human family. Take away the arrogance and hatred which infect our hearts. Break down the walls that separate us. Unite us in bonds of love and work through our struggle and confusion to accomplish your purposes on earth, that in your good time, all nations and cultures may serve you in harmony around your heavenly throne. Through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.
Amen. So we also like to start off workshops like this by asking people, what do they hope to learn from today's workshop? And what is a concern that you might have from today's workshop? And Stuart, I'm going to ask you to lead this because you have a better view.
Sure. And we don't need everybody to answer this, but it'd be helpful if several of you could do so in a way that would give us sort of a flavor of where you're coming from. So what would you like to learn from today?
Hi, this is Martha. I hope to get just clear about my own biases that I may not be aware of. And I've done some of this work before, but I think you can always use more of it. And sometimes circumstances change. And so I'm hoping for a heightened self-awareness. I guess I would put it that way.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I second Martha. I think I've never had an anti-bias training. I know what bias or having biases is, but I also would like to become more aware of my own personal biases and to be able to identify them a lot easier.
Thank you for that, Michelle. Anyone have any concerns about today?
Having been through a training similar to this and quite some time ago, a concern that I have is that there will be misunderstandings because our own personal biases sometimes cause us to say things that we don't necessarily mean the way they sound. Does that make any sense to you? And so I'm concerned about misunderstandings, but I'm hoping that we will all have open enough hearts and minds not to misunderstand one another, if you get my point.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Anyone else? Hopes or concerns?
I guess I would say one of my concerns is how this works on Zoom, because it can be a pretty emotionally impactful, and it's hard to get vulnerable on Zoom. It's hard to really feel like you're connecting with people when it's through this medium.
Thank you for saying that. And I can tell you that we've done this now, gosh, at least half a dozen times since the pandemic, and have found that the Zoom is actually helping us to be able to do this even better than before. Chris spent a lot of time working to take it from our in-person things that we'd always done into this format, and I think it's even better than before. But thank you for raising that.
Right, I will say that Zoom is obviously very different. If you're a person who feeds off energy from people, that can be missing for sure. One of the ways that I try to encourage people, particularly in our anti-racism workshops, and getting ready to lead one starting this week, is that you have to remain fully present in the session on Zoom and try not to be distracted by what's going on around you. It can be difficult, but it certainly can be done. Any other hopes and concerns that want to be shared? There not being any, we will go and just talk about what our norms are for these types of workshops. And the first one is taking time to becoming settled in God's presence. That we listen to others with our entire self, our senses, our feelings, our intuition, our imagination, and rational faculties. That we don't interrupt one another when someone else is speaking. That we take the time to pause between speakers to absorb what has been said. That we don't try to formulate answers or formulate what you want to say while someone is speaking, particularly if you might be in disagreement with what they're saying. Speak for yourself only. Express your own thoughts and feelings and refer to your own experiences. Avoid being hypothetical and steer away from broad generalizations. Do not challenge what others say, meaning others, people's experiences are their experiences, and we do not have a place to challenge that. Listen to the group as a whole. Listen and be aware to those who have not spoken, as well as those who have. And generally leave space for anyone who may want to talk, who may want to speak a first time before speaking a second time yourself. And finally, hold your desires and your opinions and even your convictions lightly. So, a couple of facts about our beloved Episcopal Church. Our church is one of the whitest Christian denominations in America, according to the Pew Research Center. 90% of church membership is white, compared to the US population, which is approximately 62%. That study was done from Pew. Those numbers come from 2019. Our church has a clear history of segregation, and unfortunately, our story hasn't changed as much as we wish it has. For a church committed to dismantling racism and segregation, statistics show that the church is still grossly out of sync with the communities where God has placed us and has called us to be. In an audit conducted by the Mission Institute, which is based in Boston, it found that diocesan leaders were generally unaware how much things like racial bias, issues of class, and continuing issues around gender can impact and alter a person's or people's experience in the ordination process. This audit was done because of an incident that happened in one of our sister dioceses. An African-American woman was going through the ordination process and abruptly left the process. She left the process indicating that she did not feel welcome at any step of the way during the course of her process. So, Stuart?
That same study found that a dominant white culture can blind leaders to the importance of race and bias. They also noted that, quote, white people tend to be unaware that they too are racialized and that too little attention is given to helping white people move past this disconsciousness. Our church has encouraged people to go deeper. That was at the General Convention, and to act in ways that go further than by just adding diverse members to committees. Those changes are important, but they tend to operate on a surface level and don't catalyze that deep institutional shift that is needed for actual change. Bishop Curry's always talking about the beloved community. And how do we become the beloved community where all our members have an equal and full place? What work needs to happen to create enduring change? How do our corporate bodies of leadership, like this one, honestly reflect on core values and norms And how do they become embodied in the formal and informal routines and procedures that will strengthen the quest for real change and for making progress in dismantling the barriers of race and bias?
Does anyone have any questions about that information? Any thoughts that you'd like to share?
Yeah, this is Frank Daniels. I'm the treasurer of the council.
Okay.
If you could put that last slide up, please. Thank you. In the previous slide, I had some concerns also with the previous slide, but I guess the bottom line is that as a white person, what exactly are you telling me with this slide? And how, I guess the next step becomes is, how are you going to try to get people to change? Because you can tell people, you can't tell people what to believe, but you can tell people how to behave. So you got to end up changing beliefs, and that I'm not sure you're going to be able to do, right or wrong, because we all have our, like you said, we all have our own biases as we were all brought up in the different cultures that we were brought up, because most of us come from immigrant families. I know I am a second generation Italian. So all the biases that I saw and learned when I was growing up as an Italian American, because and I was a Catholic. I mean, most Italians are Catholics. So how do you get to the point to where you start changing that?
So if I could start on that, I'm originally from Texas, 6th generation. So I've got a lot of racial stuff in my history and grew up with a heck of a lot of it. But the purpose of today is really to help all of us to be able to see what our biases might be, those things that we don't even know about. And I've got plenty of biases that are just darned obvious to anyone, but I've also probably got a bunch that many people wouldn't even know about. So to be able, and sometimes I don't even know these biases. And so to be able to identify those and do some personal self-reflection, I think is a big piece of what we're doing. Chris, what else would you add?
Well, Frank, what I would say, and what I say in all sessions like this, and particularly in our anti-racism workshops, we have made a choice to be part of a community of faith. It wouldn't matter if it was a synagogue or the Methodist Church or the Lutheran Church. We have made a commitment to be a member of a community of faith. And as a member of this community of faith, the Episcopal Church, we have a guiding principle that we are called to live into and by, and that's our baptismal covenant. And it's through our baptismal covenant that we are called to do the work of receiving people, all of God's people, for who they are. What that means then, and Stuart just touched upon it, is that we have to do our own personal work of self-reflection, of understanding what our backgrounds are, and those biases that are very clear to us, that were maybe learned in our home environments, and how do we address them, and how do we make sure that we are, as people of faith first, living into our baptismal call. There's no magic formula to this. It is really about a commitment and a desire to create beloved community. And while some people might think that that's a very simple and trite sort of way to say it, it really is our responsibility as the church to create a space for all people. And so I can't give you the steps. I can't tell you how. We can give you some tools. There is no magic formula in addressing issues of bias, of gender bias, of sexual bias, of race bias. There is no magic tool except your own heart. So what I would say to you is that if you have concerns I think the first place is to ask yourself, what truly concerns me that these questions sort of nip at my heel here. So you have to explore that for yourself. But really, the guiding force is our baptismal covenant and how we fully live into that as best as we can. Now, some of these are just simply facts presented and gathered by an independent source on behalf of the executive council of our church. Can't change what, factual information. These are just the facts that they have for us. So I know that didn't answer your question, but it's the best way that I know for us to really begin looking at the work that has to be done. We can all take these classes and sessions, do anti-racism work because we have to. At some point, we might want to participate in them. So I guess it depends on the mindset that you come with. Any other questions or concerns?
I'm not sure so I'm Ruth. I'm not sure if we're using like raise hand or anything like that in the thing. So I raised my hand because when I hear anti-bias, it's like an attempt to remove biases, which are a natural human way of sorting, judging, sorting, discerning, and relating and connecting. So it's the purpose of the training is to become aware of my own tendency to create, to name, to bias, to not the name to bias, but to form a biased opinion about someone else or as I relate to them. And so the goal of, in my understanding of this training, is to be, by greater awareness of my own biases, I will hold them more lightly so that I can relate more deeply to another human being as another child of God. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
Very fair.
Because you can't really get rid of a bias.
No, but we have to, exactly what you said, is to be able to at least, so when we say we have implicit bias and that we're not really aware of them, the whole idea here is to at least go when possibly we say something, I think Helen said it earlier, that there's no misunderstanding, but if there is, to stop and reflect, oh, what did I mean by that? And to be able to give a clearer explanation, to qualify what it is that you were trying to say, to be aware that, I'll give you a particular bias that I realized that I had many years ago, and I did not realize it, is I had a particular bias against Hispanic men. And I did not realize it until after some time, I realized what it was that triggered me about that. And I had to do a lot of work around trying to figure out what were the causes of that for me. And I recognized what they were, and I've come a long way in addressing that. It's that sort of stuff that we can't teach you not to have biases. We're always going to have them. I don't like cheeseburgers from McDonald's because their cheese doesn't melt, but I like cheeseburgers from home. That's a bias. But you are correct in what it is that we're trying to do. And it is not easy, but the point of the church really asking us to do these types of sessions is that when we choose not to even talk about them, then we can't even be aware about them, of the issue at hand. Does that make sense?
And to Ruth's question about raising your hands, right now we can only see like 6 or so screens off to the side. So there's a whole bunch of other people. So if you do need to say something, just speak up and that will bring your box to the front.
Any other questions or comments? Excuse me. Okay.
The unconscious mind is amazing. It can process vastly more information than our conscious mind by using shortcuts based on our background, cultural environment, and personal experiences to make almost instantaneous decisions about everything around us. The snag is, it's wrong quite a lot of the time, especially on matters that need rational thinking. Here's a classic example. A bat and a ball cost £1 10 pence. If the bat costs £1 more than the ball, how much does the ball cost? Most people, including over 50% of students at some of the world's leading universities, get the answer wrong and say 10 pence. The answer is actually 5 pence. Many of us choose 10 pence without thinking. This is because our unconscious mind uses instinct, not analysis. So our unconscious is fallible. It's also biased. It makes snap judgments of people we meet, categorizing them according to gender, social, and other characteristics. In milliseconds, we judge whether somebody is like us and belongs to our in-group. These are the people we favor. So men might favor men, while women might favor women. However, we can belong to different in-groups, and we like to be part of an in-group that's powerful, which could mean a woman favoring a man over a woman. That's unconscious bias. All of us have it, and it colors our decisions without our realizing. For example, research reveals that if I were a man, you would be more likely to be nodding in agreement right now because people pay more attention to a male voice. The Royal Society fosters excellence in science, but this can only be achieved if we select from the widest range of talent. And that's not possible if unconscious bias is narrowing down the field for non-scientific reasons. To lessen the impact of unconscious bias, which is easier for us to notice in others, we are raising the awareness of unconscious bias to members of our selection and appointment panels. We're encouraging panel members to deliberately slow down decision-making, reconsider reasons for decisions, question cultural stereotypes, and monitor each other for unconscious bias. We can't cure unconscious bias, but with self-awareness, we can address it.
So let's just go over some of those takeaways about how our mind functions, how we think about who should be part of something or shouldn't be part of something. And basically, I think that the statements that they give are good to start with, that we slow down in our decision making. Who do we want to be part of a committee or a group or whatever it might be? How do we take the time to prayerfully consider what is needed for the work that is called to be done, first and foremost, as opposed to just rattling off a group of people who are normally part of committees? How do we think outside of that box and envision other people who haven't been part of groups, governing groups? How do we look at some of our younger people and encourage or at least invite them to participate in the work of the church? So deliberately slow down in our decision making. Reconsider reasons for decisions made if needed. And that goes right to what I said before. Are the same people on these committees? When we look at the history of committees in any of our dioceses, who are the main people always on the same committees? And are they continually being called? Are there other people who can actually do some of that work? Question cultural stereotypes. And monitor one another for unconscious bias. Monitor, those were their words, but help people to understand when maybe something that is a little bit untoward comes out, just to have a conversation about what did you mean by that? Is that what you meant? Again, sometimes we do have to be our brother and sister's keeper, just saying, that really didn't come out so hot. So what are we talking about here? And again, because we are the church, I do feel that we are called to have a different standard of what it is that we do in our body as opposed to what we do out in the world. And if we live deeply to what we do in the church, then we'll live that way out in the world as well. So I keep and will always continue to go back and remind all of us of what our call is and who is calling us, particularly through our baptismal covenant. Does everyone have the worksheet that was sent? Did you receive a worksheet?
I see a nod or two.
Is that the breakout room exercise number 2, the trusted 10 inclusive leadership?
You got it.
Okay, thank you.
So what we are going to do, and we changed it from the inclusive 10 to the inclusive 5, just in the matter to save some time. What we're going to do is we're going to ask you to take your sheet and we're going to send you into a breakout group. And we want you to go and list as quickly as you can. We want you to list the first 5 people that you consider a significant leader, someone that you personally know. All you have to do is list them by their first name or by initials. And then after you've done that, go back and fill out the rest of the column. What's their gender? Do you know what their race or ethnicity is? Their approximate age. You don't have to know their exact age, their approximate age. What is their sexual orientation? A guesstimate on their educational level. Do they have a disability or no? Are they married? Are they widowed? Are they divorced? Are they partnered? And anything else. If you don't know any of the particular information other than their name and gender and possibly race, do not worry about it. It just helps to sort of fill out and to look at these matters. When you have done that, if you can just take a few minutes for you to discuss in your breakout room, what are your observations of the people who are listed on your trusted 5 list? And then we'll come back and we'll do have a little reflection on that when we come back. Okay? Does everyone understand that? All right, let me see if I can get you into breakout groups. Well, maybe I can't.
Is this something our main host needs to do for us?
Yeah, I don't think I can do it. Let me see here. Oh,
So Chris,
I got it.
okay, I was going to say I've made you the host, but let me know
I
what
got
I
it.
did.
Nope, I got it. Thank you. Stuart, you can just pull yourself back out because I'm just going to do it automatically, okay?
Pull myself out.
Yep. All right. Let me see. Create. You should be getting an invitation to go. Did you get your invitations?
I suspect that Michelle, Lydia, and Sarah are not here right now.
Okay. Trying to find you. I still see people on the screen. Oh, I see
So
it.
I'm still on the screen because I'm not really a participant. So
So if you end up in a group, just back yourself out. I'm trying to find you to make sure that I can keep you out. Here.
I'm here, Michelle. I'm here.
Oh,
But I'm not in I don't think I'm in a group.
I'm looking.
Was there a pop-up that said join?
It says
Oh.
that
It says invite, mute, raise his hand? No? Oh, wait, hold on.
It says that.
Oh, okay, room 3, right?
Sounds good.
Who else is on the screen?
Lydia York. Lydia, are you going to join a group?
It says that she is not joined.
Okay.
Miller.
Chris, are you just popping on? You're muted. I'm sorry.
It said I was in breakout room 10, and then when I arrived there, I was the only one in that room.
All right, give me a second. I'm looking now. 10, Chris Miller. Okay. 2, 9. You should have gotten another invitation, Chris.
I've not received it yet.
No.
Did you not get it yet?
Ruth, you're muted. It looks like you're trying to talk.
All right, let's try this then.
I was in a breakout room by myself in room 7. I don't know if anybody else.
I'm
What
gonna
happened for anybody else?
I'm gonna get ready to send somebody else there now.
Oh, I already left it, so I don't know if I can get back in. Let me see if I can. Yep. Okay.
Chris, did you get one yet?
She's shaking her head no.
Well, I'm not sure what to do now.
Can you just assign her, just click on her as a participant and just move her into a room?
I've done it twice already.
Oh, gosh.
We're a little familiar with doing this. We do it pretty.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean that to sound condescending.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know why she's not moving. She's not even actually, oh, there she is. It just says she's not joined. Move to, I can't move her anymore because I've already assigned her there. So I don't know why there's particular problem for her. Lydia's still here. And Sarah?
Sarah Nelson.
Sarah Nelson I already did the bias training, so I'm just here, so I can be back here at 1:30.
Gotcha.
I'm just listening.
All right. And what about Lydia?
Looks like Lydia's been, she's in a room.
It says that she hasn't joined.
She's on the screen with us right now.
Right.
Oh, I didn't see her. She's not on my screen.
And Crystal has not gone anywhere. I don't understand why.
And I just have the breakout room exercise in front of me at this moment. That's all I have before me.
All right, let me
Chris,
see.
you want to do it on your own, and then we can participate with you with the rest of the group?
I guess.
I still have Ruth sitting in a room by herself, though. That's the problem. That's where I was trying to put Chris.
I don't know what to suggest.
Nor do I.
Can you send me there now? I'll just help her out.
Nope.
Okay.
You were already assigned there.
And I just hit later on mine, so.
So try to see if you can do it now. Chris, do me a favor, go to your participant box and just look under your name to see if there's an invitation there. I don't know why Zoom didn't like you this time.
Zoom sent me to a room by myself.
It's like the same thing. It sent me to room 9 by myself.
Right,
And then
me
I
too.
took myself out and I, text you that I wasn't in a room with anyone.
All right, let's see if it won't even let me.
Actually, Chris and I were supposed to be in the same room. I was also in the room 9 by myself.
Who's speaking?
Helen
That's Helen Spence.
Hi, Helen.
And I was in room 7 by myself, Ruth Beresford.
And I'm unable to create, it's not allowed. Let me see if I can get out of this and do something else.
Well, maybe some people are in rooms and we could just like be in our own room, but start talking over you guys right now, Chris and Stuart.
Yeah, you could do that. That's fine.
I've got 3 of you here. That's great.
Okay, Chris, unmute yourself then.
You guys unmute and we will mute.
Okay.
So, so it's Helen and Chris and me?
Yep.
Is that right? Okay. And we're supposed to talk about our trusted
Five
leaders?
people. Yeah, 5 people we choose.
Uh-huh.
You know, for me, this was actually a very difficult piece of the exercise because I'm relatively new to the Diocese of Delaware, to the Episcopal Church of Delaware. I know very few people in leadership in the Episcopal Church in Delaware. So of course, one of my 5 is the bishop. One of my 5 is Ruth, because I've met her. One of my 5 is my rector, you know.
Hey, Helen, let me just stop you right there.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be in the church.
Church, okay. good.
Is anyone that you personally know.
Wow. Okay.
And see as a leader.
Living or
And
dead?
as a leader, yes.
Oh, living
Yeah.
or dead?
Somebody you know. Don't put George Washington.
I was going to say, I know dead people. No, sorry.
Well, you don't personally know George Washington, though.
No, I don't. I don't personally know.
I
him.
found it interesting that, well, my top one, I did go to all the church, not necessarily the diocese, but the Episcopal Church, kind of, just because I know people, you know, that's where I've seen leadership in action and things. You know, 5 is not a great number. So I started writing and I was like, okay, I've just listed 3 men. What does that say? You know, let's stop there. And you know, who else do you respect as a leader? So I was a little surprised by that. I always struggle with the race ethnicity, because it's like you get to be African American, but then if you're white, you're just white. And so I always kind of rail against that a little bit. So I put like a Southern American, a Midwestern American, a British American,
There you go.
you know, just instead of just a Mid-Atlantic American. And all of my folks are 50 or above, 50 to 70, gay and straight, education, all either MDiv or PhD. So all educated, no sense of disabilities, and all married. Even the gay person is married. So 5 is hard to, because you don't get as much diversity among when you're listing 5 people, I think. Maybe I'm wrong in that, but. And I don't know what other is.
For me, I picked my, it's equal men and women. And the first one was outside of our Episcopal church, and she's Black. And everybody that I picked was straight, and I am gay. And everybody has either a master's or a doctorate, no disabilities, 1 widowed, all married. And the ages range from 40-ish to 68. And it's, so I had more like 3 women and 2 men, 2 Black, 3 white. And it is hard to choose the 5.
Well, if I have to, at this point in my head, if I'm choosing 5 people that I see as leaders, not necessarily in the church, although like Ruth, the bulk of the leaders that I've been working with recently have all been church oriented. I would probably, of the 5, I'm looking, I would have 3 women and 2 men, 2 Black, 3 white, somewhere between 45 and 70, 3 straight, 2 gay, all of them with master's degrees or above. And 3 of them I know for sure are married. The other 2 I'm not certain about. Actually, I know for sure one is not. So that would be where I am with that. And they are, some of them academics and some of them church people.
Helen, what about the disability column?
Oh, none of them have disabilities that I'm aware of.
Mine also were all church oriented.
You know, I grew up in an academic household, so I have a lot of folks that I know from the academic side of my life, and then the church side of my life. Not necessarily separate, but still.
What do you notice from this, or what awareness does this give you, this little exercise?
That we need to look deeper and further.
Yeah, I mean, this is very superficial, is what I'm seeing. But it also, for me at least, as I look at the people that come to my mind, that their race, their sexual orientation, their marital status don't appear to matter to me one way or another. Educational level, it looks like does. That's sort of a bias of mine. That I see leaders as someone who have master's degrees or better. And I don't know what it says about the disability piece. One of the ones I chose, actually, who is not married, and she doesn't have a disability, but she does. She has rheumatoid arthritis, but she's had surgery to correct that. So physically, she can do what she does for a living without any outward effect. But yes, I guess there is a bias there. I mean, there is a disability there. I didn't really think about it that way. I mean, what is yours to you?
I mean, two of them are younger than me, but for the most part, but 3 are older, and have more experience in it. Well, actually, one is my age, so, and 2 are younger and 2 are older. So I guess age doesn't matter, but I think I'm the same about education level. Folks that came to mind first are all, all either clergy or educators. And so they have either MDivs or PhDs. Yeah.
How about you, Chris? What does yours say to you?
I don't think I looked at any of it. I think I was just looking at these people who I respect for who they are and the connection I had with them. And when you have to do it this way, it's like, oh yeah, this one has a PhD. Oh, but so does that one. And age group, 3 are younger, 1 my age, and 1 older. And again, I don't think I looked at it in the race or any of that. It's just that who I connected with, either spiritually or in other ways. And then when you look at it this way, now I'm categorizing.
Yeah.
So it's like a categorization. I'm like, oh, and I didn't really look at it that way. I didn't pick my one person and my first person and as that at all. But then as we're doing this exercise, I'm like, oh, okay. And so this for me is.
Chris, may I ask, what is your age?
Sure, 67.
Okay.
And I'm 66.
So can I ask why you ask that question?
Well, you said are my age, and I can't tell looking at you.
Can't tell. I'm older than I look sometimes.
Yeah.
Or act.
Yeah, I would have put you. I'm 59, so I would have put you at my age, which is, I mean, we're in a decade.
Okay.
What's that, Helen?
I put you at 50.
Oh, thank you.
I'm 29.
I thought you were way younger.
All right, Pat.
There's
Sorry, Chris, what'd you say?
I'm older than all of you. And
I said you looked much younger than that. So also you did not, I did not even fathom that. So again, just by looking at someone.
Yeah, you can't.
You make a decision about them.
Yeah.
I'll be 70 on my birthday.
Oh, really? When's your birthday, Pat?
July the 4th.
Oh.
Oh, of course, we have
An independent
fireworks.
spirit.
There you go, baby.
We are.
So I think we have everyone back with us now. And before we get in just to talking about this exercise, what I'd like for everyone to do is to close their eyes. Close your eyes and just follow this along for a quick moment. You are taking a trip to one of your favorite destinations, and as you are boarding a plane, the pilot comes out. Who do you see? When you get to your favorite destination, you go to a new restaurant that you were told to go try out. And next to you is a couple celebrating their 25th anniversary. Sometime in the morning, you're watching the news and you see that a new CEO is being introduced. A new CEO of a tech startup company is being introduced to the world and is making a statement about the company and their goals and all of that other good stuff. So open your eyes and I'm just going to randomly pick someone. Yes, I'm going to put you on the spot. So if you're muted, you'll have to unmute yourself and just tell me who you envisioned when I gave out those different categories. And so Eric, Mr. Valentine.
Yes.
Going to your favorite destination. Who's your airline pilot?
Fortunately, that's an easy one for me because prior to COVID, I flew several times a month. So yeah, that's a full-on collage of men, women, everybody, every race, just because that is what you see now.
There you go. And who did you bump into celebrating their 25th anniversary?
An old white couple.
And the new CEO with the new tech startup.
That bounced back and forth between a upper middle-aged white man and an upper middle-aged black man.
All right. Miss Nelson, Rita Nelson, how about yourself?
What was the first one?
You're going on your favorite vacation and the
yeah.
pilot comes out to greet you at the door.
Mine was a in her late 40s, early 50s young woman with long red hair.
All right. And the couple you encounter when you go out to dinner that evening, celebrating their 25th anniversary.
That was a lesbian couple in their mid 60s.
All right. And the new CEO introducing their tech company to the world.
That was a 12-year-old kid. A boy or a girl, take your pick.
Very good. And we'll do one more. Rick Hara.
Well, I just took a quick trip to Bermuda. Thank you.
Yeah.
And the pilot, everybody is white. The pilot's a white guy, older, definitely gray hair. The couple next to me is my wife and I, middle-aged white couple. The tech startup is a young white guy.
All right. Thank you. So now let's just talk a little bit about who you chose as your trusted inclusive leadership. So let's just start off very quickly. This is obviously a very superficial type of exercise, but an exercise to help you just sort of quickly think about who you considered your trusted leadership folks. They didn't have to be in the church. They didn't even have to be alive. But the point was just to get a sense of who is in your circle. Who do we gravitate to most easily? Who do we respect? So that was the goal of trying to do this. And we did shorten it a little bit. Normally we have about 2.5 hours when we do this training. We didn't want to spend a whole lot of time on this, but just to give you a sense of how we unconsciously sort of surround ourselves with people. So does anyone want to share, any of the groups that were together want to share their observations of what they noticed in their inclusive circles there? Well, you guys are going to make me pick you, right? All right.
I can go,
Okay.
Michelle.
All right.
I didn't really get to share with my group because I was a little lost in La La Land, but I did do the exercise, and I found that the people that I chose were more in line with people that, rather than leadership, I guess they inspired me. It was more of an inspirational thing. So they ran the gamut in education. You know, my mom was one of them on my list, and she has a high school education, but then, you know, the governor was my boss, and we developed a really good relationship. So he was on my list, and he, you know, was the governor. So he was in a position of leadership. Another good friend of mine who inspired me as well, she's a lawyer. So she was in there. And she was in her, I want to say mid-40s. And then I had people also younger than me. I'm 40. And I had, you know, someone on my list that was 35. So it kind of ran the gamut, but it was more people that I found as a source of inspiration rather than leadership.
Works for me. Anyone else? Thank you, Michelle. Anyone else? All right, Mr. Morgan, I'm coming to you. Unmute yourself.
Two of us of the three saw what was coming, and so we probably biased our results. What surprised me, as I told them, was that I picked people, all of whom were professionals. 4 out of 5 were lawyers. So I guess, like everybody, I tend to see as leaders like me.
That's fair. Miss Malcolm, Pat.
Hello.
Hello. How about you?
I found this exercise difficult because for me, a leader, there are certain qualifications that I look for in a leader. And I was with Frank, and we were talking about, I know a lot of really intelligent people can blow your socks off with the things they know, but some of them I wouldn't trust them to help me out of a paper bag. But one of the persons that I spoke of was my youngest daughter, who is female, of course, Black. She's 45. She's heterosexual. She has her PhD, and I forgot the other two categories on the grid. Let me see. She doesn't have any disabilities. She's divorced. And bless you.
Thank you.
The other person I chose was Tim. Tim Rodden, just retired from Christiana Hospital. He was the director of pastoral services, and Tim is male. He's white. I would say he was in his late 50s, early 60s. He's gay. I'm not sure of his educational level, but I would assume that he at least has a master's in divinity. He doesn't have any disabilities, and he's married. And I found that one of the things that I looked for in a leader was a person, again, the person that I would trust to help me out of a paper bag. Frank is a retired colonel. I think I got your rank correct, Frank. And we talked about who would I want to get me out of the foxhole. So that's the way.
That's great. Thank you. Mr. Daniels, Colonel Daniels.
Hello, here I am. Yes, Pat and I actually had a very good conversation in reference to this. And it turned out what on the surface looks like a very easy exercise to do is a very difficult exercise to do. And so because I'm retired now, and I'm kind of doing the things in life that I really enjoy doing versus working, although the bulk of my work career I really enjoyed. I chose I had 4 people. I had 2 men and 2 females. The most interesting thing, I think, that once I really got to thinking about what Pat just said about leadership and people that I respect and people that I would trust, if you will, I think the one thing that surprised me, that one of the women I put on there, she's a white person. I think she's in her mid 40s, but I'm not totally sure. She's a lesbian. She's married. I've met her partner. Her partner is a very nice person. She doesn't have any disabilities. And she is the chief financial officer of a financial organization. And she is a very smart woman. And I really got to thinking about, if I was really going to put down people that I kind of respected and people that I would trust, then I had to kind of get out of my shell where I could have very easily put 5 white guys my age. I mean, that would have been an easy thing to do. But when you really think about it and you think about what the design of the exercise is, that I really needed to start thinking outside of the box a little bit. So that's what I did. And I think for me, it worked out well. So, I mean, I actually kind of enjoyed doing it.
Thank you. And in some ways, that actually is sort of the underlying goal of why we ask you to do this, is to, how would you think about this? Now, it could be a little tricky because we said inclusive leadership, trust.
Chris, you just froze on us. Oh boy. Chris, can you turn off your video and see if we can?
I did that.
Okay.
How are we doing now?
You're fine. We can hear you perfectly.
Okay. But now I forgot what I was saying. Okay. But anyway, the idea of the exercise is just to get sort of an overview. Who do we turn to in those moments that we're in crisis or we're not in crisis? A lot of times what you'll get is somewhat of a very bland group of people that all resemble, look, and are somewhat in the same career fields or professional levels that you are in. And one of the ideas is to help us think about, oh, okay, yeah, I'm a 59-year-old woman, and most of my friends are, or people that I look to are in, the 50 to 65-year age group. But what about the younger people? Why wouldn't I trust someone younger to be part of my inner circle? And really, it's just a way of us just thinking about where we sort of get stuck with certain things. Stuart and I were privy to hearing one group that we couldn't actually get into a breakout room. And just to, again, it is a very superficial exercise. It's just a way of helping us to think about how we think, who we pull into our circles, or what circles we want to be pulled into. So that's that. Stuart, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I think for somebody like me who's got a job in human resources and in the church, I'm around a whole bunch of different kinds of people all the time. And so the first time I did this, the leader of our diocese is a Black man about my age. So, well, that was easy. Of course I was going to pick him. But my last boss was a woman also about my age. So as Chris is saying, it's pretty easy to get us pegged into a certain age range. But depending on where you work and what you do, you might find that you've got a whole bunch of different kinds of people around you.
Any questions, comments, thoughts?
Yeah, this is Martha. All of this is brought to mind an awareness that has really come to me. I moved here to Delaware in 2014 from Maine. And the opportunities to work with people of color especially, I mean, it's just been dramatic in my life. And, so these underlying these questions and the experience is, where do I place myself so that I have the opportunity to know people that are different from me. I sing in a choral group. It's all white. I don't want to sing in a white choral group anymore. You know, so it really begs for me, not just what's going on in my mind, but where am I placing myself in my work and in my entertainments and in my, you know, my hobbies and you know, and I think so many people live and die. Just quickly, when my mother came to visit me and we went out for dinner and we were a couple of African Americans who joined us, she was 82 years old. That's the first time in her whole life she had had dinner with people who were African American. And that certainly can happen to you very easily if you spent your whole life in Maine.
Sure. Thank you, Martha. That was really helpful. And that actually helps the essence of what it is that we're trying to help people just sort of recognize. You know, how do I get out of these boxes that, you know, wow, you know, how do I expand my flavors a little bit? So, all right, let's move on. Is my screen not being shared anymore, right?
Not screen shared, right?
All right, let's try this again. Screen share. Can you see it?
Nope, not yet. We still have the gallery view, or I do anyway. There you go.
Thank you.
You can see 2 slides.
You see 2 slides?
Yes, I see Joe on one side and personal bias continued on the right.
Okay. Well, we're just gonna go with the video and see what happens.
My name's Jose Zamora, and I had to drop a letter to get the title. Every morning I wake up, go on Craigslist and apply to as many jobs, every job I can that I feel qualified for. About 50 to 100 a day for months. No phone calls, no emails, nothing. One day I just thought, what if I try Joe? Just remove the S in my name and maybe I can make some dollars. The Monday I decided to go from Jose to Joe. 7 days later, the next Monday, that's when all the responses started coming. That's when all the replies and the emails.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Well, that was kind of the gist of it, though.
No, it'll continue.
My name's Jose Zamora, and I had to drop a letter to get the title. Every morning I wake up, go on Craigslist and apply to as many jobs, every job I can that I feel qualified for. About 50 to 100 a day for months. No phone calls, no emails, nothing. One day I just thought, what if I try Joe? Just remove the S in my name and maybe I can make some dollars. The Monday I decided to go from Jose to Joe. 7 days later, the next Monday, that's when all the responses started coming. That's when all the replies and the emails. The position is open. We want to meet with you. Call us back. I was applying for the same exact jobs, the exact same resume, the exact same experience, just a different name. Sometimes I don't even think people know or conscious or aware that they're judging, even if it's by a name, but I think we all do it all the time.
Anybody have any thoughts on that? Excuse me. Have anybody experienced that before?
I can sort of relate.
My name's
am I muted? No, I don't think I'm
You're
muted.
fine. You're
Yeah,
fine.
okay. I was at a job one time and I had to write a report, and you know, you get to that place in the report, you want to say something, but you're not quite sure how to put it so that it sounds like what you really want to say. So I called up one of my kids, and I said, you know, I'm looking to say such and such, and I had her on speakerphone, and we were having a conversation around what I was wanting to say, and she told me, you know, maybe if you said la da 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 da. So we finished the conversation, and I hung up, and the another person came in from another office and said, "Who was that you were talking to?" And I said, "That was my daughter." "That was your daughter?" "Well, she sounds so articulate and so bright." "Okay, excuse me. Because my daughter's African American, she's not supposed to be bright and not supposed to be articulate?"
I can relate to that. Has anyone else had any experiences similar to that?
Chris, this is Kim Capwell here.
Hi, Kim.
I applied for a job, went teaching in an adult school. And when I got a phone call back about the job, they were scandalized to find out that Kim happened to be a male instead of a female.
Wow, I could see that. Has anyone else experienced had any personal experience of bias in job interviews or other life experiences?
Yes. When I was in my, this is Helen, when I was in my mid-20s, and we were living in another part of the country other than the East Coast, which is where I was raised. My degree is in music education, and I was applying for a job as a band director at a high school. 20-year-old women were not being hired for band directors in high schools in the area of the country where I was living. And, you know, in looking at the little questions over here, who had the power, obviously the superintendent or the principal of the school, whoever had the power. And it made me feel absolutely insignificant. That the experience that I'd had, that the work that I'd done just was of no matter because I was young and female.
Absolutely. Thank you, Helen.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else?
I had an experience. I was a secretary actually at IBM at the time, and they had a whole suggestion program there for employees. And the guy that was there left the company, and I guess, and my boss was his boss, but he just said, well, Rita, you take over running this program until we can, you know, get somebody permanent. And so I ran that program for 6 months. I ran it very successfully. Things went smoothly. There were no glitches. But then they hired, and I was in my early 20s at the time. And so they hired a young man just out of school himself. And I, you know, I said, why? I've been doing this for 6 months. It's been very successful. What's the problem? And they said, well, it's a position that just needs a man.
Hello, EEO.
Yeah. If only then, right?
Yeah, if only that.
Right.
Hadn't even been a word back then.
So there.
If
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I'm having a hard time telling people this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I may be a retired Army colonel, but I did not get there easily. I am only about 5 feet 5 inches tall, so I'm not very big. And when I was going to school to be commissioned as an officer, I went to infantry OCS at Fort Benning, Georgia. And the thinking back then was that to be an infantry platoon leader in Vietnam, you had to be big and bad.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm sometimes I'm bad, but I'm not very big. So I was put in what is known as the midget platoon. And there were about 45 of us in that platoon. And one way or another, I became kind of the leader of that platoon because I was probably the most hard-headed. I'm Italian, and my father used to call me hard-headed, a testado in Italian, which I am. And so I wasn't going to let them beat me, no matter what they did, no matter how they did it. I graduated from that school and I was commissioned armor, although I was infantry qualified, which was okay with me because I enjoyed the Armor Corps. But there are times when you have to overcome that. And I've listened to everyone else talk, and I realized that as we were growing up, some of us anyways, in the 60s and 70s, life was much, much different out there than it is today. If you were to try to, in the United States Army today, to put a midget platoon together, you'd be relieved to command in 30 seconds. So that is just, I guess we all have our things to overcome, but that to me caused me to fight my entire life for what I believed in very strongly.
Thank you, sir. as a military person, not not for a career, but I'm also an Air Force veteran. We certainly would not get away with doing a midget platoon, but there's still an incredible amount of bias and race issues in the service. I was a law enforcement specialist in the Air Force, and I was selected to be the crime prevention NCO. And part of my job was to write weekly inserts for the base newsletter. And I would have to write them and send them to the first shirt, who would review them, and they would all come back to me all marked up and, you know, do it again, do it again. And I would do it. And then finally, I just took a couple of previous newsletter reports that were written by the previous person, and I would send that to the first shirt, and they would come back all written up. Finally, I went to him and I said, "Sir, I'm just not certain what the problem is. You need to improve your writing skills, McLeod. You got to improve your writing skills." I said, "Sir, it's from Sergeant Diaz, who was here before me, that you approved." And he looked at me and he was like, "Oh." So there was two issues happening here. One, I was a woman and he was a tough 6'4", almost 25 years in the service at that point, who had a very clear bias both against women and some issues about people of color. But it taught him something. We had a really long conversation about it. And he just said, "You know, Chris, I just didn't think you had the skills for writing at the time." And he said, and I realized that was my poop. Obviously, he didn't say that. And he went on. So you're absolutely right. We do have to fight for some certain things. So
Chris hasn't come out as somebody who's also vertically challenged.
Very vertically challenged. We're going to move along because
can I say something though about the second question?
Yes.
One of the things that's concerning to me, so I was raised, I'll be 60 this year, and my mother taught assertiveness training and did all sorts of things like that in the 70s, and I was made aware that everybody has personal power. Everyone has power to make a change. Power is influence to change a situation. And one of the concerns that I have about society today is the idea that there might be a differential in power, but that doesn't mean I don't have power. And some power is used manipulatively or coercively or in a corrupting way, but it's still power. And sometimes I think in society today, we're encouraging people to see that they are powerless. And so victims of X or Y or Z. And God gives every single human being power to make to change, power to influence. And so, Frank tells of a situation there where he used his power very effectively to accomplish something. Even though there was a more powerful system or structure over him that was limiting. So I don't know. I just when I read the question, who had power? Everybody has power. It's just how you choose to use it, how you give it away, how you deny it in yourself, and say, "Oh, I can't. I'm not. I'm powerless."
Would it have
I
been more
believe
helpful
that
if it
every
was?
single person is powerful.
Would it have been more helpful if the question had been phrased, "Who had more power?"
Yeah.
That's helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Also, I would ask, yes, everyone has power. Do people actually give power away, or is power taken from them? So this is where some different perspectives might come in. How does this play out really? I've been taught my entire life that I have the power to do any blessed thing I want to. I have had more instances where I have been divested of power, not because I gave it away, not because I invited someone to manipulate it, but because it was snatched from me. So what I want to sort of challenge you on a little bit is, are there instances where power is actually taken away from people? Again, the perspectives and our experiences lend maybe a different viewpoint on some of that. And so not disrespectful, I want you to hear this in the right light. To me, that's a very broad generalization, because in fact, that does not impact everyone the same way, no matter how we've been taught and what we've been taught, or who we've been taught to bring into the world as ourselves, as capable human beings. There are other systems that are at play that aren't, excuse me, that aren't always as conscious to everyone. So I'd like for you to just think about that for a moment as well. We're going to move on.
Seem to share anything with.
Welcome, and thank you for coming today, guys. Today I'm going to be conducting an experiment where I'll ask you a series of questions. Now, these questions will be very personal questions, and for us to get a true result, I need you to be completely honest with how you respond. The first question I have is, who in here was the class clown? Who is never on time?
And then there's us. We who have tattoos. We who feel lonely. We who have been bullied. We who have bullied others. We who are madly in love. We who have overcome great adversity. There's the lucky ones, whose team won the championship this year. We who beat cancer. And then there's all of us who are created in the image of God. And as one body, we stand together, united as one under His grace.
This is really just a reminder of us of what our call is through our baptismal covenant. And just remembering what our actual covenant is will you continue in the apostles' teaching and in fellowship, in the breaking of the bread and in the prayers? And we all say, I will with God's help. Will we persevere in resisting evil, and whenever we fall into sin, repent and return to the Lord, and we respond, I will, with God's help, will you proclaim by word and example the good news of God in Christ? I will, with God's help. Will you seek and serve Christ in all persons, loving your neighbor as yourself? I will, with God's help. And will we strive for justice and peace among all people, respecting the dignity of every human being? I will, with God's help. It is almost impossible to, quote unquote, dismantle racism, address bias, or any of those other issues in an hour and a half. This is work that we have to be committed to on a regular basis. In order for us to make real change, we have to be willing to change our hearts so that we can move forward to do the work that God has called us to do. Normally, we would end this session a little bit differently. And as I said earlier, we normally have about 2 hours to do this, but we have a shorter time. In light of some of the things that have gone on in our country, not only this week, but in the previous years, we thought it made sense to sort of end with a message from Bishop Curry. And this is a message that he gave to the church in August of 2017. And I am just going to go right into that right now.
In this moment, when there is a sense of darkness in our land, when sometimes hope feels and seems far away, in this moment when we must now remember new martyrs like young Heather Heyer, it may help to remember the words and the wisdom of the martyrs of the past. The year was 1967. The nation was in turmoil. There was war abroad, turmoil within, and anxiety as to whether or not the very democracy would hold. There were riots in our streets, racial tension and animosity, and levels of poverty that had revealed themselves to a surprised nation. In 1967, Dr. Martin Luther King wrote and published his last book. The title of that book may well help us now. It was titled, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community? Where do we go from here? Chaos or community? The moment of crisis, of struggle, is also a moment of decision. And we are in a moment of decision. Chaos or community? I'm a follower of the Lord Jesus Christ because I truly believe that Jesus of Nazareth has shown us the way beyond the chaos to community, to God's beloved community. Jesus came and through the way of love showed us how to be right and reconciled with the God who created us, and has shown us how to be right and reconciled with each other as children of that one God who has created us all and as brothers and sisters. In so doing, the teachings, the life, the spirit, the person, the death, the resurrection of Jesus of Nazareth are pointing the way to the way of love to the beloved community. Now I know that there may be a sense in which notions of the beloved community of God, phrases like that, may sound nice, but naive. May be idealistic, but unrealistic. I've been around a while, and yet the truth is, the beloved community is not just idealistic, and it is not naive. In the horror of what we have seen and experienced on the streets of Charlottesville, neo-Nazis shrieking hatred, racial supremacy, shrieking language and words like Jews will not replace us, racial animosity, bigotry, vile. In those voices and those shrieks, We have seen the alternative to the beloved community. And the alternative to the beloved community is unthinkable. We cannot, we must not, and we will not go there. The truth is, Jesus has shown us the way. People of goodwill, of all stripes and types and religious traditions, following the way of love, can find the way to the beloved community. I don't think it's an accident that the readings for the Holy Eucharist this Sunday, from the 45th chapter of Genesis, the 56th chapter of Isaiah, the 11th chapter of Romans, and the 15th chapter of Matthew, that each one of those readings assigned for this Sunday point in the direction of God's vision and God's passionate desire to create the beloved community out of the fragments of our humanity and with this whole creation. That is not an accident, for that is the very mission of God in this world, and that is the work of Jesus and people who follow him. Moments of crisis are times of decision. And this is a time of decision. And we who follow Jesus of Nazareth have made a decision to follow the way that leads to beloved community.
And so with that, I just want to remind us that, again, we know that it's hard and difficult work, but our ultimate goal as the church, the Episcopal Church, as the Episcopal Diocese of Delaware, as the Episcopal Diocese of Maryland, and so on and so forth, it is our goal to all of us to grow, to become a community of reconcilers, justice makers, and healers who not only share a common passion for becoming beloved community, but for understanding intimately God's call to us through our baptismal covenant, God's call to us to be active participants in the creation and sustaining of the beloved community that we so hope and dream for. Stuart and I both thank you for your attention today and for your participation. We are a little bit over time, but are there any questions, concerns, remarks that you'd like to share before we end in prayer? There being none, Stuart?
Let us pray. O God, who created all people in your image, we thank you for the wonderful diversity of cultures in this world. Enrich our lives by ever-widening circles of fellowship, and show us your presence in those whom we perceive to be different from us, until our knowledge of your love is made perfect in our love for all your children. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Good to see you all today.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
for this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you. Be well, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
See you
you.
soon, Martha.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Stay.
All right, we've had a full day. And I just wanted to bring us together. And things that are always, as I said, the first piece of pie, it's got some messy edges to it, but it still tastes really good. So this is the first time, we've attempted this kind of orientation to get everybody on board. So the things I ask now, if anybody has any response to something that you wished that you had had more time or learned more about, or something that brought up questions that you will be pursuing. You have to unmute. Nobody's unmuted. Oh, Ruth's unmuted.
I'm unmuted, sure. No,
Good.
there's no, I think it was very helpful.
Good. Other things that you didn't know about or wish you want to learn more about or anything? Other than Mark, who knows everything, right?
The only, I was expecting a little bit of a tutorial on Boardable again, because I think it's a tool that we're not using as effectively as we could. I find it a little complicating, a little hard, but
Okay.
you know, once more experience and practice with it. And I noticed the last page of the resource book had some cues about it.
Okay, but that's good. Good. You're right, because Boardable, yeah, going back and forth, I often get misguided by my own self.
So I can speak to that for just a moment. I am planning to do a tutorial. We just recently upgraded to a better package, so to speak. So this has all kinds of bells and whistles, and I just need to spend a little bit of time with it because I think it's going to really improve the usage and what users will what you as users will get out of it. So I just need to spend a little bit of time, but I was hoping to do that in the next 2 weeks. So thank you, Ruth. Yeah, that's on my agenda. And as Sarah said, you know, that first piece of pie. So next year we'll have this fleshed out. So it'll be a little bit more organized, I guess, for me anyway.
I have a question. I guess, is there any plans to put that resource guide up on the website so that, and I think it's something that every parishioner in this diocese should have access to when they say questions like, well, what is the Commission on Ministry, or what does the council do, or, you know, what does standing committee mean?
I don't know that, Rita, but I certainly will look into that and ask, you know, the canon or the bishop, and certainly get back to you about that.
Okay, it's an excellent resource, and I mean, 35 of us got it, and it just seems a shame not to let it have a wider circulation for people who ask questions about our structure.
Great. I will put an email off in a few minutes.
Okay.
Thank you. Anything else that percolated today, or that you wish you'd had more time with, or less time with, or anything like that? Lydia has her picture up here. She's really
I thought it was.
Go ahead.
I thought it was very interesting to listen to all the different presenters, and now as the new treasurer, to try to figure out how they all interact with each other, and then how we bring things to the council, knowing what all this interaction is and how it works together. So for me, it was real interesting.
Good, good. Anything else? All right.
Rita, thank you for doing this. I mean, sorry, Sarah, thank you for doing this.
We're related. We just don't know how.
Yeah. Right, sure. We're all right. But thank you for doing this.
Well, I think it's as I said, I began my standing committee with knowing nothing. So, all right. Well, let us go forth from this place, having increased our wisdom, having increased our knowledge, and being even more prepared to serve you, our God, who always calls us forward to a vision, a kingdom which is ever revealing itself and ever luring us forward. Be well, and may your families be well, and may we keep in our prayers those Brad and Thomas and others who are not well, and all those people who have COVID, and those people who care for them, and those people who are just struggling with day-to-day life.
And also, let's remember Marianne Babness.
And Marianne, yes,
her
and Marianne and her family, as she goes from this life to life eternal.
Amen.
Go forth, and amen.